My wife danced with another man at my party as if I was invisible. The man was dipping dollar bills into my wife's shirt and pants, shouting, "Your husband can disappear. I own you tonight." Everyone laughed, but regretted it the second I left. Now he knows who I am. My name's Grayson Ward, and I'm going to tell you about the night I learned that throwing yourself a birthday party is basically like giving the universe permission to pants you in front of everyone you've ever met. Look, I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I've designed buildings that touch clouds, brokered deals that would make your accountant weep with joy, and somehow managed to convince a woman way out of my league to marry me. So naturally, I figured organizing one lousy birthday party would be a cakewalk. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. So catastrophically, hilariously, soul-crushingly wrong that if my life were a movie, this would be the scene where the audience starts nervously laughing because they can't tell if it's a comedy or a tragedy anymore. I'd gone all out for this thing. We're talking rooftop restaurant with a view that made the Chicago skyline look like it was photoshopped by God himself. I hired a live band, not some garage outfit that plays Wonderwall on repeat, but an actual jazz ensemble with a guy who'd played backup for someone who once opened for John Legend. Close enough to famous for me. I sent out invitations 3 weeks in advance, the fancy kind with embossed lettering that probably cost more per square inch than my first apartment. My family came, even Aunt Carol, who still asks me when I'm going to get a real job, despite the fact that I pull in more annually than her entire book club combined. My colleagues showed up in their designer suits, already half drunk from pre-gaming because apparently nobody goes to parties sober anymore when you're over 30. Friends from college, guys from my gym, even my neighbors who I'm pretty sure only came for the open bar. They were all there. And Lydia. Sweet merciful heaven, Lydia looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread for women who married up and know it. She was wearing this emerald green dress that probably violated several laws of physics with how it defied gravity. Her hair done up in that effortless way that I know for a fact takes 3 hours and costs roughly what a small nation spends on infrastructure. She was glowing, radiant, the kind of beautiful that makes other women jealous and makes men walk into glass doors because they're not watching where they're going. I remember thinking, as I stood there with a whiskey in my hand and 50 people singing, "Happy Birthday," off-key, that I was the luckiest son of a gun in the entire Midwest. I was feeling like a king, the kind you see in movies right before everything goes sideways. You know that moment where the hero is standing on top of the world, chest puffed out, thinking he's invincible? That was me at approximately 9:47 p.m. on a Saturday in June. The band was crushing it, playing this smooth rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon" that made even my tone-deaf cousin start swaying. The food was immaculate, those little bacon-wrapped dates that rich people pretend aren't just fancy pigs in a blanket, sushi that probably required a permit to catch, and a birthday cake that cost more than my first car. People were laughing, clinking glasses, telling stories about me that were 70% embellished and 30% straight-up lies. But hey, that's what birthdays are for, right? I made my rounds like a politician at a fundraiser, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on being another year closer to needing reading glasses and daily fiber supplements. My buddy Riley slapped me on the back so hard I almost dropped my drink and said something profound like, "Bro, 38 looks good on you, even though you're basically almost 40 and that's practically ancient." Thanks, Riley. Real touching. My boss gave me a bottle of scotch that probably cost more than most people's car payments, and made some joke about how I'd need it for surviving another year married. Everyone laughed. I laughed. Lydia laughed. We were all just laughing and drinking and pretending that life was one long, perfect highlight reel. That's when I should have known something was off. Because in my experience, the universe doesn't let you feel that good for that long without dropping an anvil on your head, Coyote style. But I was too busy being the man of the hour, soaking up the attention like a plant that had been stuck in a dark closet for 6 months, to notice the storm clouds gathering in the form of one Trent Monroe and his absolutely breathtaking lack of boundaries. I was standing near the bar, chatting with my architect partner Greg about some zoning nonsense that would bore you to tears, when I noticed Lydia on the dance floor. Nothing unusual there. She loves dancing, always has. Even when we're at home and some random song comes on the radio, she'll start twirling around the kitchen like we're in some kind of rom-com. It's adorable, honestly, one of the things I love about her. So I glanced over, smiled at how happy she looked, and went back to my conversation about load-bearing walls or whatever Greg was droning on about. But then I noticed the crowd around her was getting bigger. And louder. People were pulling out their phones, which in 2025 is basically the universal signal that something either amazing or terrible is happening. I excused myself from Greg mid-sentence, he probably didn't even notice, and moved closer to see what the fuss was about. That's when I saw him. Trent Monroe, a guy I'd met exactly twice before and already disliked both times, was dancing with my wife. And when I say dancing, I'm using the term loosely, because what he was actually doing was grinding up on her like they were teenagers at prom and the chaperones had all gone home. But wait, it gets better. Because Trent, in his infinite wisdom and complete absence of social awareness, had decided that the appropriate way to celebrate my birthday was to start pulling dollar bills out of his wallet, and, I kid you not, tucking them into my wife's dress. Not handing them to her. Not making it rain like some kind of hip-hop video parody. No, he was deliberately, methodically, showily dipping those bills down the front of her dress like she was a stripper, and he was the world's most obnoxious patron at a bachelor party. The crowd went wild. People were hooting, hollering, filming, laughing their asses off like this was the greatest entertainment they'd seen since that time Chad from accounting got drunk at the Christmas party and tried to breakdance. My coworkers had their phones out, definitely already uploading this to every social media platform known to mankind. The band kept playing like nothing was wrong, probably because they'd seen weirder stuff at weddings. And Lydia? My beautiful, elegant, supposed partner in life? She was giggling. Actually giggling, like this was all just harmless fun and not a complete demolition of our marriage in front of 50 witnesses and probably 1,000 more once this hit Instagram. I stood there with my whiskey glass, watching this circus unfold, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a little voice that sounded suspiciously like my therapist was saying, "Grayson, this is what we call a defining moment." I smiled. Not a real smile. The kind of smile you give when you're a pressure cooker 3 seconds from exploding but you're in public so you have to pretend everything's fine. The kind of smile that hides nuclear rage behind 32 teeth and years of learning to mask your feelings in boardrooms full of sharks. Funny thing about life? You never see the knife coming. Especially when it's wrapped in glitter and pretending to be a charity dance. Everyone was laughing, the band was playing, and I was sipping my whiskey thinking, what a night. I just didn't know the joke was me. Here's the thing about watching your life implode in slow motion. Your brain does this weird thing where it tries to rationalize the insanity happening right in front of your eyeballs. It's like a defense mechanism, some kind of psychological airbag that deploys to keep you from completely losing your mind in public. So when I first saw Lydia dancing with Trent Monroe, and I mean really saw it, not just the casual glance I'd given before, my brain immediately went into damage control mode. It's fine. It whispered. It's harmless. It's your birthday. People dance at parties. This is normal. You're being paranoid. Maybe lay off the whiskey. Trent Monroe. Even his name sounds like a guy who peaked in high school and has been chasing that high ever since. He's one of those self-proclaimed entrepreneurs who's always got 15 different business cards in his wallet, and none of them mean anything. Last I heard, he was selling protein powder through some multi-level marketing scheme that definitely isn't a pyramid scheme, bro. It's about building your empire and crushing your goals and other motivational garbage that sounds like it came from a desk calendar at a corporate retreat. He's got that kind of charm that works on a very specific type of person, the kind who thinks that confidence and competence are the same thing, that a bright smile can substitute for an actual personality, and that shouting about the grind makes you a business genius instead of just loud and annoying. Women seem to think he's attractive, which I guess I can understand if you're into the whole human Ken doll with the depth of a puddle aesthetic. He's got that gym bro build that screams. I spend 4 hours a day taking mirror selfies and another 3 hours posting them. Perfect teeth that are definitely veneers, and hair that has more product in it than a Walgreens beauty aisle. Guys, on the other hand, take one look at Trent and immediately know he's the type who'll sleep with your girlfriend, steal your protein shaker, and then try to recruit you into his downline. He makes men suspicious and women temporarily lose about 40 IQ points, which is apparently exactly what was happening on my dance floor at my birthday party. At first, and I mean at the very beginning of this disaster, before it spiraled into something that would haunt my nightmares for months, it really did seem harmless. Lydia was just dancing. The band had transitioned into something more upbeat, some modern jazz fusion thing that made people want to move, and she'd been pulled onto the dance floor by her friend Monica, who works in marketing and thinks everything is a networking opportunity. I watched them for a second, saw Lydia laughing and spinning, and thought, sure, let her have fun. It's my birthday. She's been planning this thing for weeks. She deserves to cut loose. I'm not one of those psycho-controlling husbands who needs to monitor his wife's every movement like she's a toddler near a swimming pool. We're adults. Married adults. Adults who theoretically trust each other enough to survive a simple dance at a party without the fabric of our relationship disintegrating. So I turned back to my conversation with Riley and my cousin Marcus, who were debating whether the Bulls had any chance of being relevant again this decade. Spoiler, they don't. I was halfway through making a point about their terrible draft picks when I heard the crowd get louder. Not normal party loud, but that specific kind of chaos that makes you think either something amazing is happening or someone's about to get arrested. I looked over again, and that's when I saw that Monica had left the dance floor and been replaced by Trent freaking Monroe, who apparently had decided that my wife needed a dance partner with all the subtlety of a monster truck rally. He was close. Too close. The kind of close that makes you wonder if he's heard of personal space or if he thinks it's a myth like Bigfoot or ethical billionaires. But even then, I told myself to stay cool. Maybe he's just a bad dancer. Maybe he doesn't realize he's basically dry humping my wife in front of God and the entire Chicago social scene. I took a sip of my whiskey, trying to be the bigger man, trying to channel all those anger management techniques my therapist taught me during my high-stress project phase last year. Breathe, Grayson, I told myself. It's just a dance. It doesn't mean anything. You're secure in your marriage. You're a mature, evolved man who doesn't need to pee on his territory like some kind of caveman. Then Trent reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. And I thought, okay, weird, but maybe he's putting it away so it doesn't fall out while he's dancing. That would have been the reasonable explanation. The normal explanation. But Trent Monroe isn't reasonable or normal. He's a walking red flag factory, and he was about to manufacture the biggest, brightest red flag anyone had ever seen. He pulled out a dollar bill. Then another. Then another. And before my brain could even process what was happening, he started tucking them into Lydia's dress. Not handing them to her like a tip for good service. Not making it rain in some playful, albeit tasteless, way. No, he was deliberately, slowly, theatrically dipping those dollar bills down the front of her dress, his fingers lingering way longer than necessary, like he was fishing for change in a couch cushion, except the couch was my wife, and the change was my rapidly disappearing dignity. The crowd absolutely lost it. People were screaming, laughing, pulling out their phones faster than they would for a celebrity sighting. I saw Jenkins from the office holding his phone up with both hands like he was filming the moon landing. My cousin's girlfriend had her mouth hanging open so wide you could have parked a Toyota in there. Even the bartender stopped pouring drinks to watch this train wreck unfold. And the worst part, the absolute soul-crushing, ego-demolishing, faith-in-humanity-destroying worst part, was that Lydia was laughing. Not uncomfortable laughing, not nervous. Please help me. Laughing, but genuine, head thrown back, having the time of her life laughing. Trent was eating it up like a starving man at an all-you-can-eat buffet. He was grinning, waving to the crowd, pulling out more bills like he was trying to set some kind of world record for public humiliation. Someone, I think it was Riley's girlfriend Ashley, shouted, "Make it rain, Trent!" And he actually did, throwing a handful of ones in the air like we were in a music video. They fluttered down around Lydia like the world's most insulting confetti, and she just kept dancing, kept laughing, kept pretending like this was all perfectly normal birthday party behavior. I was standing there, whiskey glass frozen halfway to my mouth, watching my marriage get auctioned off for singles like a clearance item at a garage sale. Marcus nudged me and said, "Bro, you seeing this?" And I wanted to say, "No, Marcus, I'm actually blind and deaf and also dead inside." But instead I just nodded and took another sip because what else was I supposed to do? Cause a scene at my own birthday party? Storm over there and drag my wife off the dance floor like some possessive psycho? That's what they'd expect. That's what would make me look bad, like I'm the problem, like I'm the insecure husband who can't handle his wife having a little innocent fun. Except there was nothing innocent about what happened next. Trent grabbed the microphone from the band's singer, just yanked it right out of her hand like he owned the place, and shouted into it, his voice booming across the entire rooftop. "Your husband can disappear. I own you tonight." He pointed at me as he said it, making sure everyone knew exactly who he was talking about, making sure there was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. This wasn't some drunken joke. This was a declaration. A challenge. A public humiliation wrapped in a smile and delivered with a wink. The crowd went silent for exactly half a second before erupting into more laughter, more cheers, more phone cameras capturing every angle of my spectacular downfall. Someone started chanting, "Trent, Trent, Trent!" And others joined in like this was a sporting event, and I was the opposing team getting demolished. Lydia, to her credit, finally looked uncomfortable, her smile faltering just a bit, but she didn't stop him. Didn't tell him to back off. Didn't do anything except stand there with dollar bills sticking out of her dress like the world's worst party favor. I smiled. The kind of smile that hides nuclear rage behind 32 teeth and 15 years of learning to swallow your pride in business meetings. The kind of smile that says, "I'm fine," while your internal organs are staging a revolt. The kind of smile that absolutely nobody believed, but they pretended to because it was easier than acknowledging the atomic bomb that had just detonated in the middle of my birthday cake. Yeah. Real classy. Welcome to 38, Grayson. Happy freaking birthday. You know what's funny about reaching your breaking point? It doesn't feel like breaking at all. There's no dramatic crack, no earth-shattering snap, no orchestral crescendo that lets everyone know you've officially had enough of everyone's nonsense. Instead, it's more like a switch flipping. 1 second you're a functioning human being with emotions and reactions and the basic instinct to defend yourself, and the next you're just done. Completely, utterly, profoundly done with everything and everyone in a way that feels almost peaceful. It's the emotional equivalent of your computer giving up and displaying that blue screen that says, "Yeah, I got nothing. We're shutting down now. Have a nice day." That's where I was at exactly 10:03 p.m. on my 38th birthday, standing in the middle of my own party while 50 people laughed at the spectacle of my wife being turned into a human tip jar by a guy who probably spells entrepreneur with 3 wrong letters. I didn't yell. Didn't scream. Didn't channel my inner Incredible Hulk and start throwing tables off the rooftop like frisbees. Didn't even raise my voice above a conversational tone, which honestly might have scared people more than if I'd gone full psycho. Because here's what nobody tells you about rage: the quiet kind is always scarier than the loud kind. The guy who flips out and throws punches? That guy's predictable. You can see him coming from a mile away. But the guy who just stands there with a smile frozen on his face while his entire world crumbles? That guy's a mystery novel waiting to explode. I just stood there, whiskey glass still in my hand, watching the crowd slowly realize that maybe this wasn't as funny as they thought it was. The laughter started to peter out like a car running out of gas, sputtering and dying in awkward little bursts. People were glancing at each other with those uncomfortable looks you see when someone makes a joke at a funeral and nobody knows whether to laugh or call security. Trent was still grinning like he'd won the lottery, completely oblivious to the fact that he just signed his own death warrant with a smile and a microphone. Lydia had finally stepped away from him, her face flushing red as she started to realize that maybe, just maybe, this had gone too far. The band had stopped playing entirely, which meant the only sound on that rooftop was the Chicago wind and the distant hum of traffic and about 47 people holding their breath waiting to see what I'd do next. Would I throw a punch? Storm over there and cause a scene? Break down crying like some kind of after-school special? The suspense was killing them. I could feel their eyes on me, could practically hear their internal monologues writing the story they'd tell their friends tomorrow. Oh my God, you should have seen it! Grayson totally lost it at his own birthday party. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I just stood there, taking another slow sip of my whiskey like I was at a casual happy hour, and not in the middle of the most humiliating moment of my entire life. The whiskey burned going down, which was good because at least I could feel something other than the numb emptiness spreading through my chest like ice water. Riley appeared at my elbow, because of course he did. Riley's been my best friend since college, back when we were both idiots with more ambition than sense, and he's got this radar for when I'm about to do something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. He's seen me through breakups, business failures, that time I accidentally insulted a client's wife and almost lost $1 million contract, and now this, the crown jewel of bad nights. Bro, he whispered, leaning in close enough that nobody else could hear. You okay? I turned to look at him, and I must have had some kind of expression on my face because he actually took a step back like I'd grown a second head. Oh, Peachy, I said, keeping my voice light and casual, the way you'd comment on the weather or traffic. I love watching my wife get tipped like a Vegas dancer. Really adds flavor to the night. Spices things up. You know how marriage can get boring after a while? Well, problem solved. Next year maybe I'll hire a whole strip club. Really commit to the theme. Riley's eyes went wide. Gray, man, I don't think. You know what the best part is? I continued, still smiling that dead smile that probably made me look like a serial killer in a business casual outfit. I actually paid for this. The venue, the band, the open bar that's currently fueling everyone's entertainment. I'm literally financing my own public humiliation. That's efficiency, Riley. That's innovation. I should put it on my LinkedIn. Dude, maybe you should talk to Lydia. Talk? I laughed, and it came out wrong, too high-pitched and sharp, like glass breaking. Oh sure, let me just walk over there and interrupt her revenue stream. She's probably making more tonight than I paid her for our anniversary. Maybe I should start tucking dollar bills in her dress too. Join the club. Make it a group activity. People were definitely staring now, trying to pretend they weren't listening while obviously listening to every word. My Aunt Carol had her hand over her mouth like she was watching a car accident. Jenkins from the office had lowered his phone but was still recording, because apparently even my breakdown needed to be documented for posterity. Monica, Lydia's friend who'd started this whole mess by pulling her onto the dance floor, looked like she wanted to melt into the floor and disappear. Lydia was making her way toward me, weaving through the crowd with that look on her face that I'd seen 1,000 times before. I can explain. Look, it's not what it looks like. Look, please don't be mad. Look that women perfect sometime around age 16 and use for the rest of their lives whenever they know they've messed up. Her dress was still full of dollar bills, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't also soul-destroying. She looked like a broken slot machine, if slot machines wore designer dresses and had terrible judgment. But I didn't wait for her explanation. Didn't stand there and let her try to smooth this over with words and tears and promises that it didn't mean anything. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't matter if it meant something or not. What matters is that it happened. What matters is that she let it happen. What matters is that 50 people watched it happen and most of them thought it was hilarious. So I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. I set my whiskey glass down on the nearest table, gave Riley a pat on the shoulder, and walked toward the exit. Not stormed. Not ran. Just walked, calm and steady, like I was leaving any normal party at any normal time for any normal reason. One foot in front of the other, past the silent band, past my coworkers with their phones still out, past the catering table with my expensive birthday cake that nobody had even cut yet, past the decorations I'd approved and the guest list I'd spent weeks perfecting. "Grayson!" Lydia called after me, her voice cracking. "Grayson, wait!" I didn't wait. Didn't even turn around. Just kept walking, my footsteps echoing on the wooden deck, heading toward the elevator that would take me down and away from this nightmare. Behind me, I could hear people starting to murmur, that low buzz of conversation that happens when something genuinely uncomfortable goes down, and nobody knows what to do about it. "Should someone go after him?" I heard someone ask. "Give him space," Riley said, and God bless him for that. "Just give him space." The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding that felt wildly inappropriate for the moment. I stepped inside, turned around, and got one last look at my birthday party, at the confused guests, at the band awkwardly holding their instruments, at Lydia standing in the middle of the dance floor with her hand outstretched like she was trying to grab me from 40 feet away, at Trent Monroe finally looking slightly less confident, and slightly more like someone who'd just realized he'd kicked a beehive. The doors started to close, and I saw Riley mouth something that looked like, "Call me," but I just gave him a small nod. My last view before the elevator sealed me away was of the crowd starting to disperse, the party atmosphere officially dead and buried, people gathering their coats and bags and making excuses about early mornings and babysitters. They thought I'd storm off like a jealous husband, make a scene, give them something to talk about. But no, I'm too calm for that, too calculated. I just nodded, gave a polite smile, and walked out like I was leaving a business meeting that had run overtime. People stopped laughing real quick when they saw I wasn't coming back. Because deep down, underneath all their phones and their gossip and their schadenfreude, they knew something important: the quiet guy is always the problem. The guy who doesn't yell? That's the guy who plans. That's the guy who waits. That's the guy who wins. And I was just getting started. The thing about driving through Chicago at night when your life has just imploded is that the city doesn't care. The lights keep blurring past, red and white streaks on the highway like someone dragged a paintbrush across reality. Traffic keeps flowing, people keep living their lives, the whole world just keeps spinning like you didn't just experience a Category 5 emotional hurricane on a rooftop in front of everyone who's supposed to respect you. It's almost philosophical, in a really depressing way, like the universe is reminding you that your personal drama is cosmically insignificant, and maybe you should get over yourself. Thanks, universe. Real comforting. A+ motivational speaking. I drove in complete silence, which is unusual for me because I'm normally one of those people who needs noise, podcasts, music, talk radio, anything to fill the void. But tonight silence felt right. Felt appropriate. Like the only honest thing in a world full of fake laughs and faker people. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white, and some distant part of my brain registered that I was probably driving too fast, weaving through lanes like I was in a Fast and Furious movie except without the cool cars or the family that's apparently more important than anything. My phone started buzzing around the time I hit Lakeshore Drive. First just once, then twice, then it basically turned into a vibrator having a seizure in my cup holder. I didn't look at it. Didn't need to. I knew exactly who was blowing up my phone with messages that would range from apologetic to defensive to confused, probably in that exact order. It's funny how predictable people become when they know they've screwed up. They all follow the same script: deny, deflect, minimize, then finally maybe, admit they were wrong, but only after they've exhausted every other option. Buzz. Buzz. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The phone was practically having a meltdown, which made two of us. I focused on the road, on the rhythm of streetlights passing overhead, on breathing like a normal human being instead of someone who was currently running about 8 different disaster scenarios through his head. The lake stretched out to my right, dark and endless, and I had this weird intrusive thought about just driving straight into it, car and all, like some kind of dramatic movie ending. But that would be giving everyone exactly what they wanted, A story. Did you hear about Grayson Ward? Totally lost it after his wife got dollar bills stuffed in her dress. Drove into Lake Michigan. So sad. Anyway, what are we having for lunch? Nope. Not happening. I've never been the dramatic exit type, and I wasn't about to start now just because my wife decided to audition for Magic Mike at my birthday party. I made it home in about 20 minutes, which meant I'd definitely been speeding, but whatever, add it to the list of tonight's problems. My house, because suddenly I was feeling very possessive of things with my name on the deed, sat at the end of a quiet street in Lincoln Park, one of those renovated brownstones that real estate agents describe as charming and historic, which is code for we fixed the foundation issues, but you're still going to hear weird noises at night. I designed the renovation myself 3 years ago, back when Lydia and I were in that honeymoon phase where we actually liked each other and made decisions together like functional adults. Now it just felt like a museum to a marriage that had apparently been a joke the whole time. I parked in the driveway, didn't even bother with the garage, and sat there for a minute, engine off, just staring at the house like it might give me answers. It didn't. Houses don't do that, despite what HGTV wants you to believe. My phone was still having its meltdown in the cup holder, the screen lighting up every few seconds with new notifications. Finally, against my better judgment, I picked it up. 17 missed calls. 33 text messages. 2 voicemails. And it had only been 25 minutes since I left the party. Impressive, really? That's dedication to the cause of making me feel guilty for leaving my own humiliation party early. Lydia had sent about 15 of those messages, each one progressively more frantic. Where did you go? Grayson, please answer. It was just a joke. Everyone's asking where you are. You're embarrassing me. Can we please talk about this like adults? That last one almost made me laugh. Like adults. Sure, Lydia. Because adults definitely let random protein powder salesmen stuff money in their clothes while their husbands watch. That's peak maturity right there. Should probably write a self-help book about it. Riley had sent a few too, much more reasonable. You good, bro? And call me when you're ready. And I got your back. That's why Riley's my best friend. He knows when to push and when to just exist in the background until you're ready to deal with humanity again. But the real kicker, the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday, was the message from Trent Monroe himself. And yes, I know what you're thinking. How did he even have my number? Excellent question. Turns out we're in the same LinkedIn group for Chicago entrepreneurs, and he'd sent me a connection request months ago that I'd accepted because I accept everyone and don't actually pay attention to who's in my network. My first mistake. My second mistake was not blocking him immediately after meeting him, because anyone who introduces himself by talking about his personal brand and his disruption strategy is automatically a problem. His message read, "Hey man, no hard feelings, right? Just having fun. Your wife's cool as hell. You're lucky." The audacity. The sheer, unfiltered, weapons-grade audacity of this human dumpster fire. I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds, reading it over and over, letting each word sink in like poison. No hard feelings. Just having fun. Your wife's cool. You're lucky. I typed out my response with the kind of calm precision you only achieve when you're so angry that you've looped back around to serene. So was our marriage, apparently. Sent it to Lydia, not Trent, because Trent would get his response in a different way. A better way. A way that would make him wish he'd stayed home tonight and posted his protein powder testimonials to his 17 Instagram followers instead of deciding to make an enemy out of someone who could ruin his life before breakfast. I got out of the car, went inside, and started packing. Not everything. I'm not dramatic enough for the full-scale evacuation, just enough for a few days. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the chargers for various devices that apparently run my life now. I moved through the house like a ghost, not really seeing it, just going through motions that felt automatic. This was our bedroom, with the king-size bed we'd picked out together at some overpriced furniture store. This was the closet where her clothes took up 70% of the space and mine were crammed into the corner like an afterthought. This was the bathroom where she kept about 47 different beauty products that all claimed to do the same thing but apparently required individual purchase. I grabbed my laptop bag from the office, the one room in the house that was entirely mine, that Lydia had never bothered to decorate because she said it was too boring and needed color. It was perfect. Dark wood desk, leather chair, walls lined with architectural drawings and photos from projects I'd completed over the years. Buildings I'd designed. Spaces I'd created. Proof that I was more than just some guy who could be publicly humiliated without consequence. Because here's what Trent Monroe didn't know. Here's what most people didn't know, actually, because I don't go around announcing it like I'm some kind of tech bro at a networking event. I'm not just a designer. Not just some random construction guy with a house in the suburbs and a wife who apparently moonlights as entertainment. I'm the architect and silent investor in half the commercial real estate in this city. That rooftop restaurant where my marriage died tonight. I own 60% of it. The building it sits on top of? Designed it. The 3 other locations in the chain? Mine. Every chair Trent sat on, every drink he bought from the bar, every square inch of that space where he decided to publicly humiliate me, I paid for it. I've got layers. Dangerous layers. The kind that come from building an empire quietly while everyone else is busy posting about their grind on social media. I learned a long time ago that the people who talk the most about their success are usually the ones who have the least of it. Real power is quiet. Real money doesn't need to announce itself. And real revenge? Real revenge doesn't happen in the moment. It happens slowly, deliberately, with surgical precision. I zipped up my bag, took one last look around the house, and left again. Not out of anger this time, but purpose. Cold, calculated purpose. My phone buzzed again, probably Lydia calling for the 20th time, but I ignored it. She'd have to sit with her choices for a while. Sit with the silence. Sit with the same feeling she'd given me when she laughed at another man's touch. As I drove away, heading to Riley's place because I knew he'd let me crash without asking too many questions, I couldn't help but smile. Not the fake smile from earlier, but something real. Something that came from knowing what was about to happen. Trent Monroe had just humiliated the wrong guy. And he was about to find out exactly who Grayson Ward really was. Game on, buddy. Game on. Riley's apartment is exactly what you'd expect from a 37-year-old bachelor who makes good money but refuses to grow up, expensive furniture that doesn't match, a PlayStation that gets more use than his kitchen, and a fridge containing beer, leftover pizza, and what might have been vegetables at some point in their past life. He opened the door at midnight looking like he'd thrown on the first clothes he could find, which he probably had, and took one look at my face before stepping aside without a word. That's friendship right there, knowing when someone needs silence more than they need a pep talk. Guest room's ready, he said, gesturing down the hall. Clean sheets, towels in the closet. Mi casa y su casa, bro. Except don't touch my gaming setup or we're gonna have problems. I dropped my bag in the guest room, which was actually pretty nice considering Riley's general approach to adulting. The bed was made, there were actual pillows instead of the couch cushions I'd been expecting, and it didn't smell like a fraternity house, which already put it ahead of his last apartment. I could hear him in the kitchen, the sound of bottles clinking and cabinets opening, doing that thing guys do when they don't know what to say so they just make noise and hope it helps. I walked back out to find him holding 2 beers, standing in his living room like he was waiting for permission to speak. Riley's known me long enough to understand that I process things internally first, that I need to sit with emotions for a while before I'm ready to talk about them. Most people can't handle that. They want immediate reactions, instant processing, emotional availability on demand like you're a vending machine that dispenses feelings. But Riley gets it. He's seen me through enough disasters to know that the quiet phase is temporary, and what comes after is usually either brilliant or terrifying, sometimes both. Want to talk about it? He asked, handing me a beer. Not particularly, I said, twisting off the cap and taking a long drink. It was some craft IPA that probably cost $8 and tasted like someone melted pine trees into liquid form, but it was cold and alcoholic, so it served its purpose. Cool, cool. We can just sit here in masculine silence and pretend we're emotionally healthy. He flopped onto his couch, which was one of those oversized sectionals that could seat 12 people but mostly just collected his laundry. Or we could watch people yell at each other on reality TV. I've got 3 different Housewives franchises recorded. I actually smiled at that. You watch Real Housewives? Ironically, he said defensively. It's anthropology. Studying human behavior in its natural habitat. Very educational. Sure it is. We sat there for a few minutes, drinking our pretentious beer and not watching the TV he'd turned on for background noise. Some late-night talk show was on, the host making jokes about politicians that probably would have been funny if my brain wasn't currently occupied with planning 17 different revenge scenarios. Riley kept shooting me glances, clearly dying to say something but holding back, which I appreciated even though I knew the dam was about to break. Finally, he cracked. Come on, Gray, he said, turning to face me with that concerned friend look that people practice in mirrors. Maybe he's just an idiot. Like, a genuine, certified, medical-grade idiot. Not everyone's playing 3-dimensional chess. Some people are just dumb. Then it's going to be a short investigation, I said, and even I could hear the edge in my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Riley raised his eyebrows. Investigation? Bro, what are you planning? Please tell me you're not going to do anything that requires me to post bail. Nothing illegal, I assured him, which was technically true. Everything I was planning existed in that beautiful gray area where it's perfectly legal but absolutely devastating. Just a little fact-finding mission. Due diligence. You know, standard business practices. Standard business practices? Riley repeated slowly. Why do I feel like that's code for something that's going to end up as a true crime podcast? I took another drink, letting the moment stretch out, enjoying the way Riley was simultaneously curious and terrified. You know what Trent doesn't know about me? I said finally. That you're secretly Batman? Close. I'm the architect and silent investor in that entire chain of rooftop restaurants he loves bragging about partying in. Riley blinked. Then blinked again. Then sat up straighter, his beer forgotten. Wait, what? The Skyline Group? That's you? 60% of tonight's venue specifically. 40% of the others. I stay silent because it's better for business. People pay premium prices when they don't know the owner's watching. But I own the spaces, Riley. I designed them. Every beam, every layout, every square foot of that rooftop where that clown decided to make a show out of my marriage. Holy shit. Riley breathed. Does Lydia know? She knows I have investments. She doesn't pay attention to the details because, and I quote, business stuff is boring. Apparently dollar bill dancing is more her speed. Riley let out a low whistle, the kind you make when you realize you've just witnessed the beginning of something spectacular and possibly catastrophic. So what are you going to do? I smiled, and it must have been a good smile because Riley actually leaned back a little. I'm going to remind Mr. Monroe that there are levels to this game, and he just challenged someone playing a sport he doesn't even know exists. That's terrifyingly vague. It's meant to be. I pulled out my phone, finally ready to deal with the digital avalanche that had been building all night. Lydia had sent about 30 more messages, each one a variation of panic and justification. My coworkers had started a group chat that I immediately muted. My Aunt Carol had somehow gotten involved, which meant my entire family would know about this by morning. But I ignored all of that and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed, Daphne Stone. Daphne's been my lawyer for 6 years, ever since I needed someone to handle a complicated real estate merger that involved 3 different holding companies and enough legal paperwork to kill a small forest. She came highly recommended by another investor who described her as an angel with a flamethrower, which turned out to be the most accurate character assessment I'd ever heard. She looks like she should be running a charity gala in pearls and sensible heels, all grace and southern charm. But put her in a courtroom or a negotiation and she turns into something that would make a honey badger look cuddly. She smiles like an angel but files lawsuits like a demon, and she's never lost a case I've hired her for. It was almost 1 a.m, which would have been too late to call any normal lawyer, but Daphne isn't normal. She's one of those people who sleeps 4 hours a night and considers it excessive. I'd gotten emails from her at 3 a.m, voice messages at dawn, text messages during what should have been family dinners. The woman runs on coffee, ambition, and what I suspect is a deep-seated need to destroy anyone who crosses her clients. I called. She picked up on the second ring. Grayson Ward. Her voice came through crisp and alert, no hint of sleep despite the hour. This is either very good news or wonderfully terrible news. I'm hoping for the latter because I've had a boring week. Daphne, I said, and I could hear Riley lean forward, clearly not even pretending not to eavesdrop anymore. I need you to pull the operational files on Skyline Venue North, the rooftop location. Specifically, I need rental agreements, insurance policies, and any documentation we have on event liability clauses. There was a pause, the sound of papers rustling in the background, a keyboard clicking. That's the Lincoln Park location, correct? The one that hosted your birthday party tonight? The very same. And I'm assuming something interesting happened at this party that requires legal documentation at. Another pause. 12:47 a.m. on a Sunday morning? Let's just say one of the guests decided to test the boundaries of acceptable behavior, and I'm feeling inspired to review our policies on guest conduct and venue access. I could practically hear her smile through the phone. Guest conduct violations. How deliciously vague. Should I be preparing anything else? Partnership dissolution papers? Restraining orders? A strongly worded letter that makes someone reconsider their life choices? Just the venue files for now. I'll brief you properly on Monday morning. 9 a.m. your office? Make it 8:30. I'll have coffee and a preliminary strategy ready. This is going to be fun, isn't it? Daphne, you have no idea. Those are my favorite kind of cases. See you Monday, Grayson. And for what it's worth, whoever decided to mess with you tonight picked the wrong target. We hung up, and I sat back feeling something I hadn't felt since leaving that party: control. Not the fake control you pretend to have when everything's falling apart, but real control. The kind that comes from having resources, connections, and a lawyer who treats destruction like an art form. Riley was staring at me like I'd just revealed I was a superhero. Bro, he said slowly, you're actually going to destroy this guy, aren't you? I'm going to educate him, I corrected. There's a difference. Is there, though? I finished my beer and stood up, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the hour and everything to do with the emotional roller coaster I'd been riding since Trent pulled out his first dollar bill. I'm going to bed. Thanks for letting me crash here. Anytime, man. Seriously. Riley stood too, looking like he wanted to say something profound but couldn't find the words. For what it's worth, what happened tonight was messed up. You didn't deserve that. No, I agreed. I didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I raised stakes. I woke up on Riley's guest bed at 7:30 in the morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck made of regret and cheap beer. My head was pounding with that special kind of hangover that comes from mixing alcohol with emotional trauma, and my mouth tasted like something had died in it and then been reanimated just to die again. The morning sun was streaming through the blinds that Riley had probably installed wrong because they were letting in way too much light for someone who desperately needed darkness and silence, and maybe a time machine to go back and unlive the previous night. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, hoping that maybe the whole thing had been a nightmare. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at my desk and dreamed up this entire catastrophe. Maybe I'd wake up and it would still be Friday, and I could cancel the whole party and just spend my birthday doing something safe and humiliation-free, like getting a root canal or filing taxes. But no, my phone was on the nightstand, glowing with approximately 400 notifications, which meant it was all very real and very much my current life. I grabbed the phone and immediately regretted it. The messages had multiplied overnight like rabbits on fertility drugs. Lydia had sent about 50 more texts, progressing through what I can only describe as the 5 stages of, "Oh God, my husband left his own birthday party because I let a protein powder salesman turn me into a human ATM." There was denial. "You're overreacting." Anger. "You embarrassed me by leaving." Bargaining. "Can we please just talk?" Depression. "I can't believe this is happening." And finally something resembling acceptance. "I messed up. I know I messed up. Please come home." My family group chat was on fire, which never happens unless someone died or got engaged or did something spectacularly stupid in public. Aunt Carol had apparently appointed herself as the family spokesperson and was demanding to know what happened at that party, and why is everyone talking about Lydia on Facebook, and did you really just abandon your wife? My mom, bless her heart, was trying to be diplomatic, but you could tell she was dying to know the gossip. My brother sent a single message. "Do WTF happened? Call me." But it was Riley's apartment, and I could smell coffee brewing, which meant he was already up and probably preparing to play therapist. I dragged myself out of bed, caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, looking exactly as rough as I felt, and shuffled out to the kitchen in the same clothes I'd slept in because I hadn't packed pajamas. Priorities had been elsewhere. Riley was standing at his fancy espresso machine that he'd bought during a self-improvement phase, and used maybe twice a month, looking surprisingly awake for someone who'd probably gotten the same amount of sleep as me. He glanced up when I walked in and immediately poured me a cup without asking if I wanted any, which is true friendship right there. "You look like death," he said cheerfully. "But like fashionable death. Death that has good bone structure." "Thanks. I feel like fashionable death too." I took the coffee and drank it black because I needed the punishment. It burned going down and tasted like bitter reality, which was appropriate. "So," Riley started, leaning against the counter with his own mug. "Funny story. Your wife is downstairs." I nearly spit out my coffee. "What?" "Yeah, she showed up about 10 minutes ago. Still wearing last night's dress, mascara everywhere, looking like the walk of shame personified. She's been buzzing the intercom asking to see you. I told her you were asleep, but she said she'd wait." He paused. "She's been sitting on the front steps for the last 20 minutes. Mrs. Henderson from 3B walked past her and asked if she needed help, thought she was homeless." Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Very soap opera. I'm kind of into it, honestly. Should I tell her you're awake, or are we pretending you died in your sleep? I considered this for a solid 10 seconds, weighing the pros and cons of facing my wife versus faking my own death and starting a new life in Montana. Montana seemed appealing. No people, lots of space, probably nobody there selling protein powder or stuffing money into married women's clothing. But I'm not a coward, despite what my current situation might suggest, so I sighed and said, "Tell her to come up. Might as well get this over with." Riley raised his eyebrows. "You sure? Because you look like you're about to either cry or commit murder, and I really don't want to have to testify at a trial." "I'm sure. Just give me 5 minutes to look slightly less like a zombie." I went back to the guest room, splashed cold water on my face, tried to make my hair look like something other than a bird's nest that had been through a hurricane, and changed into the clean shirt I'd packed. When I looked in the mirror again, I still looked tired, but at least I looked like a functional human being instead of someone who'd been dragged behind a car. Good enough. By the time I came back out, Lydia was standing in Riley's living room looking absolutely wrecked. And I mean wrecked in a way that would have made me feel sorry for her if I wasn't currently made of ice and passive-aggressive rage. Her emerald green dress, the one that had looked stunning last night, was wrinkled and had suspicious stains that were probably from sitting on Riley's dirty front steps. Her hair was a mess, half falling out of whatever style she'd had it in, and her makeup had clearly been crying-proof tested and failed spectacularly. Black mascara streaks ran down her face like war paint applied by someone having a breakdown. She looked like she'd had the worst night of her life, which gave me a small, petty sense of satisfaction that I'm not proud of but absolutely felt anyway. Riley had made himself scarce, probably hiding in his bedroom so he could eavesdrop without seeming like he was eavesdropping. Smart man. Grayson. Lydia started, her voice hoarse like she'd been crying all night, which she probably had. Coffee? I interrupted, holding up my mug like we were having a casual Sunday morning chat and not the conversation that would determine whether my marriage survived past breakfast. She blinked, clearly thrown by my calm demeanor. What? Coffee. Do you want coffee? It's a simple question. I walked past her to the kitchen, forcing her to follow me, establishing that I was in control of this conversation. Power moves. I'd learned them in boardrooms, and they work just as well in personal disasters. Yes, okay, coffee. She followed me like a lost puppy, which would have been pathetic if it wasn't also exactly what she deserved. I poured her a cup, handed it to her without any cream or sugar even though I knew she liked both, and leaned against the counter with my own mug. So, I said conversationally, like we were discussing the weather. Hell of a party last night. It was just a stupid dare, she blurted out, the words tumbling over each other in their rush to escape. Monica dared me to dance with him, and then he just started doing that thing with the money and everyone was laughing and I didn't know how to stop it without making a scene. A scene, I repeated flatly. You were worried about making a scene. As opposed to the not at all scene-like situation of having another man stuff dollar bills down your dress in front of 50 people including your husband? I know how it looked. Do you? I took a sip of coffee, keeping my voice level, almost bored. Because from where I was standing, it looked like my wife was enjoying herself while some jackass with a protein powder addiction turned her into a charity case. It looked like everyone at my birthday party thought it was hilarious. It looked like I was the punchline to a joke I didn't even know was being told. Her face crumpled, fresh tears starting to flow, and part of me, a very small, very distant part, wanted to comfort her. But the rest of me was still too angry, too hurt, too aware that she'd chosen to laugh instead of stopping it. Nothing happened, she said desperately. I swear to God, Grayson, nothing happened with him. It was just dancing. Just stupid, meaningless dancing. I believed her. Partly because I knew Lydia, knew she wasn't the cheating type, knew she was more careless than malicious. But also partly because it didn't matter. That was the thing everyone seemed to be missing. The question wasn't whether she'd slept with him or kissed him, or even particularly liked him. The question was about respect. About boundaries. About the fact that she'd let someone disrespect our marriage in public and hadn't seen a problem with it until I walked out. I believe you, I said, and I watched relief flood her face. But that's not the point, Lydia. The relief evaporated. Then what is the point? The point is that you let it happen. The point is that when everyone was laughing, you were laughing too. The point is that my wife, my partner, the person who's supposed to have my back, became entertainment for a crowd at my own birthday party, and you didn't think there was anything wrong with that until I left. I wasn't thinking. Exactly. I set my coffee down harder than necessary, the mug clinking against the counter. You weren't thinking. About me, about us, about what that looked like. You were thinking about having fun, about being the center of attention, about whatever validation you were getting from Mr. Protein Shake and his dollar bills. She was full-on crying now, those ugly sobs that make your whole body shake. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry, Grayson. It was stupid and I hate myself and I'll never. Do you know what I do for a living, Lydia? I asked, cutting off her apology because I wasn't ready to hear it yet. I mean, really do. Not just the architecture stuff. She looked confused, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. You design buildings? You have investments? I design buildings, yes. But more importantly, I invest in them. I build them. I own them. I let that sink in for a second. That restaurant last night? I own 60% of it. The building it's in? I designed it. Every rooftop venue in that chain? Mine. At least partially. Her eyes went wide. You what? Reputation is currency in my line of work, Lydia. When someone dips money into your wife's clothes and everyone laughs, that's not just marriage trouble. That's reputation trouble. That's every colleague at that party wondering if I'm a pushover. That's every business partner questioning whether I command respect. That's my professional credibility taking a hit because my personal life became a circus. I didn't know. And that's the problem. You didn't know because you never asked? You know I have investments, but you don't care about the details because business stuff is boring. You love the house, the lifestyle, the designer dresses, but you never wondered how it all actually works. She stood there, coffee untouched, looking like I'd slapped her. And maybe I had, verbally, but sometimes truth hits harder than any physical blow. What do you want me to do? She whispered. How do I fix this? I picked up my coffee again, taking a long drink while I considered the question. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I know that it was just a dare isn't good enough. And I'm sorry isn't going to cut it. Not yet. The silence stretched between us like the Grand Canyon, wide and deep and full of things we weren't saying. And baby, I'm loaded with a lot more than just money. I'm loaded with patience, with plans, and with a very clear understanding of what happens next. 3 days. That's how long it took for Trent Monroe to gift wrap his own destruction and hand it to me with a bow. I spent those 72 hours doing what I do best, planning, researching, and making phone calls to people who owe me favors. Daphne and I had our Monday morning meeting, which turned into a 3-hour strategy session that felt more like plotting a heist than discussing business operations. She pulled files, found loopholes, and occasionally laughed in that way that makes opposing counsel nervous. By the time we were done, I had a folder thick enough to use as a weapon and a plan that would make Sun Tzu proud. Lydia had gone back to our house after that disastrous coffee conversation at Riley's place. We weren't exactly talking, more like existing in the same general universe while maintaining emotional distance. She'd text me updates like, I'm sleeping in the guest room. And, I told Monica we're not friends anymore. Like that somehow made up for turning my birthday into a viral humiliation. I responded with one-word answers because I'm petty like that, and also because I was busy. Busy watching Trent Monroe dig his own grave deeper with every social media post, every tagged photo, every smug comment about living his best life, and making power moves. Then Tuesday afternoon, my assistant forwarded me an interesting email, a rental request for Skyline Venue West, our Gold Coast location. The event was described as a business mixer and networking celebration for, wait for it, Trent Monroe's supplement company, whatever the hell it was called this week. Apparently Mr. Dollar Bills was feeling so good about himself after his performance at my party that he decided to throw his own shindig at what he thought was just some random upscale venue. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. The rental request went through our normal channels, got approved by our events manager who had no idea about my personal vendetta, and just like that, Trent Monroe had rented my property to celebrate being the world's biggest tool. The universe, despite usually being indifferent to human suffering, occasionally delivers comedy gold. I didn't cancel his reservation. Didn't block it. Didn't give any indication that I was aware or cared or planning anything at all. I just marked it in my calendar, smiled, and started planning my entrance like I was Bruce Wayne about to crash a party as Batman, except instead of a cape I had lawyers and instead of fighting crime I was fighting disrespect with economic warfare. Thursday evening rolled around, and I found myself standing in my closet at 7 p.m., looking at the same suit I'd worn to my birthday party. Navy blue, tailored perfectly, the one that made me look like I belonged in a boardroom or a whiskey commercial. Lydia had picked it out last year, back when we did things like shop together and pretend we enjoyed it. I put it on slowly, deliberately, like armor. Same suit, same tie, same shoes. If I was going to deliver poetic justice, I was going to do it with style and symmetry. Riley called while I was getting ready. Bro, are you sure about this? Because this feels like the kind of thing that either goes incredibly right or incredibly wrong with no middle ground. I'm aware, I said, adjusting my tie in the mirror. That's what makes it fun. Fun. Right. That's definitely the word I'd use for potential public confrontation at a business event. He paused. You want backup? I can wear my fancy suit. The one that makes me look like I have my life together. I appreciate it, but this is a solo mission. Some things you have to do yourself. Okay, but if you end up on the news, I'm telling everyone I tried to stop you. Fair enough. I drove to the Gold Coast venue, which sits on top of a building I designed 4 years ago. 23 stories of steel and glass, with the restaurant occupying the entire top floor, panoramic views, retractable roof, the kind of space that makes people feel rich and important even when they're there. I'd poured my heart into that design, fought with contractors and city planners and budget limitations to make it perfect. It was mine in a way that went beyond just ownership. Every beam, every window, every sight line had my fingerprints on it. The party was already in full swing when I arrived at 8:30. I could hear the music from the elevator, some generic EDM that all sounds the same, the kind of music people who don't actually like music play at parties because it's good vibes. The doors opened, and I stepped into chaos. The place was packed, maybe 80 people, all dressed in that business casual way that screams, I'm trying to network but also get drunk. I recognized a few faces from the supplement world, some Instagram influencers with more followers than brain cells, and of course, standing in the center of it all like a king holding court, Trent Monroe himself. He was wearing a white suit. An actual white suit like he was Tony Montana or a game show host from the 70s. He had a drink in one hand and his phone in the other, probably taking selfies to prove to the internet that he was important. A small crowd surrounded him, laughing at his jokes that probably weren't funny, nodding at his business advice that was probably terrible, generally acting like he was Elon Musk instead of a guy who sold overpriced powdered supplements to people who'd believe anything. I walked in slowly, hands in my pockets, looking around like I owned the place. Which I did. Literally. The music was loud enough that nobody noticed me at first, just another guy in a suit at a networking event. But then someone recognized me, Jenkins from my office, who was apparently here for God knows what reason, and his eyes went wide. He elbowed the person next to him, who turned and looked, and then that person told someone else, and it spread through the room like a virus. That awareness that something was about to happen. The music kept playing but conversation started dying out, people turning to look at me with expressions ranging from confused to horrified to excited like they just realized they had front row seats to a disaster. Trent was still oblivious, mid-sentence about disrupting the wellness industry, or whatever nonsense he was spewing, until someone tapped his shoulder and pointed in my direction. He froze. Actually, legitimately froze like someone had hit pause on a video. His smile locked in place, his drink halfway to his mouth, his entire body going rigid as his brain tried to process what his eyes were seeing. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head. Why is Grayson Ward here? How did he know about this party? Why is he wearing that same suit? Is this about to be bad for me? Yes, Trent. Yes, it is. The music finally stopped. Someone had the sense to cut it, and the room went completely silent. 80 people holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I took my time walking through the crowd, which parted for me like I was Moses and they were the Red Sea, nobody wanting to be too close to whatever was about to go down. Lydia was there too, I noticed with some surprise. Standing near the back with a group of women, looking like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She'd mentioned something about networking events this week but hadn't specified which ones. Probably hoping to avoid running into Trent again, and instead she got to watch her husband crash his party like the Kool-Aid man of revenge. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room even without a microphone. Welcome to my property. I hope the drinks are strong and the shame is stronger. Trent's face went from confused to pale in about 2 seconds flat. Your what? My property, I repeated, gesturing around the room with one hand. Skyline Venue West. I own it. Well, 70% of it, to be precise. I designed the building it's in. I approved your rental request. I could have cancelled it, but where's the fun in that? Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh shit." Loud enough for everyone to hear. A few people had their phones out, already recording because of course they were. This generation documents everything like they're all war correspondents instead of drunk people at parties. I walked over to where the DJ had set up his equipment and picked up the microphone, which he handed over without protest because he could read the room. "I wanted to thank you all for coming tonight," I said into the mic, my voice now amplified and impossible to ignore. "Especially you, Trent. Really appreciate you choosing one of my venues for your little celebration here." Trent looked like he was doing mental math, trying to figure out if there was any way this could end well for him. There wasn't. "Grayson, look man, I didn't know." "Oh, I'm aware you didn't know. That's kind of the point." I pulled out my phone with my free hand, pulling up the file Daphne had prepared. "See, here's the thing about owning venues. We have security cameras. Lots of them. For safety, insurance purposes, you know how it goes. And those cameras record everything." I could see Trent starting to sweat despite the air conditioning. "What are you?" "I'm glad you asked." I gestured to my assistant manager, who I'd texted earlier and who was waiting by the AV system. She nodded and pulled up the file I'd sent her onto the venue's massive projection screen, the one we usually use for corporate presentations and wedding slideshows. The footage started playing. Crystal clear, professionally shot security camera footage from my birthday party 4 days ago. The timestamp in the corner. The crowd gathering. And there, in perfect high-definition detail, Trent Monroe stuffing dollar bills down my wife's dress while everyone laughed and filmed and generally acted like civilization was optional. The room went from silent to dead silent. The kind of silence you could hear someone's soul leaving their body. On screen, past Trent shouted, "Your husband can disappear, I own you tonight," and pointed directly at past me standing in the background with that frozen smile. Present Trent looked like he wanted to disappear into his white suit and never emerge. I woke up Friday morning to discover that I'd accidentally become an internet sensation, which wasn't on my bingo card for this year, but here we are. My phone was absolutely melting down with notifications, texts, emails, social media tags, news alerts, and even a few interview requests from local media outlets who apparently thought my public takedown of Trent Monroe was newsworthy content. I lay in bed at Riley's place scrolling through the chaos, drinking my coffee, and occasionally laughing out loud at the sheer absurdity of how fast the internet can turn someone into a meme. #$Trent was trending nationally. Nationally. As in, people in California who never heard of either of us were now intimately familiar with Trent Monroe's spectacular downfall. Someone had edited together the security footage from my birthday party with the footage from last night's confrontation, added dramatic music that sounded like it came from a true crime documentary, and posted it everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now, YouTube, even LinkedIn, which meant Trent's professional reputation was being barbecued on the platform where people are supposed to be professional. The video had something like 2 million views and climbing, with comments ranging from supportive, "This man is a king for standing up for himself," to absolutely savage, "Trent Monroe looks like someone ordered Ryan Gosling from Wish." But my personal favorite was the meme someone created. A split-screen image of Trent at my birthday party with the caption, "I own you tonight," and then Trent at his own party looking like a ghost with the caption, "I own nothing actually." Simple, elegant, devastating. That's the internet for you. It'll roast you medium rare and serve you with a side of public humiliation. Riley walked into the guest room without knocking, which was rude, but also we're past the point of privacy, I guess, holding his phone up like he just discovered alien life. "Bro, you're viral. Like, actually viral. My mom sent me the video." My mom! She never sends me anything except Facebook chain letters about taxes and Jesus. I saw," I said, still scrolling. Apparently I'm either a hero standing up to toxic masculinity or a vindictive psychopath who abused his power, depending on which corner of the internet you're hanging out in. The vindictive psychopath people are just jealous they don't own buildings, Riley said, flopping onto the bed like we were teenagers at a sleepover. Everyone with actual power is on your side. I've seen at least 15 think pieces about accountability and consequences. You're basically a folk hero for married men everywhere. Great, I'll put that on my resume. Grayson Ward, architect, investor, folk hero for emotionally damaged husbands. My phone rang, an actual phone call, which nobody does anymore unless it's serious or they're over 60. It was my business partner Greg, calling at 8 in the morning, which meant he'd been up for hours because Greg's one of those annoying morning people who think dawn is a reasonable time to be functional. Grayson, he said the second I answered. What the hell did you do last night? Defended my honor. Exercised property rights. Provided entertainment for the masses. Pick your favorite. The Skyline Group's phone has been ringing off the hook since 6 a.m. We've got 3 interview requests, 5 new rental inquiries, and apparently our Instagram followers doubled overnight. People want to book events at the place where that guy got owned. He paused. From a business perspective, this is fantastic. From a friendship perspective, are you okay? That's Greg for you. Always leads with business, follows up with feelings. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I feel like I just won the Super Bowl of petty revenge. Good. Because Trent Monroe's lawyer called. I could hear the smile in Greg's voice. They want to discuss resolving this matter privately before it escalates further. Which is lawyer speak for please make this stop, our client is having a breakdown. Forward everything to Daphne, I said. She's handling all Trent-related communications. I'm too busy enjoying my newfound internet fame. Already done. She sounded delighted, by the way. Like, disturbingly delighted. Pretty sure she cackled when I told her about the legal threat. We hung up, and I continued my morning scroll through the apocalypse I'd created. Trent's supplement company, Broforce Elite, which sounds like a rejected G.I. Joe spin-off, had lost 3 major sponsors by dawn. I'm talking 6-figure endorsement deals just evaporating like water on hot asphalt. Their Instagram posted a statement that was basically corporate speak for, "We don't know this man, and please don't associate our protein powder with public humiliation." One company even posted a gif of someone cutting ties with scissors, which was petty and also hilarious. Trent's personal Instagram, which usually got thousands of likes on his shirtless gym selfies and motivational quotes stolen from dead philosophers, was getting absolutely demolished in the comments. Every post, going back months, was filled with dollar bill emojis and comments like, "How's that frozen account treating you? And remember that time you thought humiliating someone's husband was a good idea?" His follower count was dropping in real time. I watched it go from 47,000 to 46,800 in the span of 10 minutes. Death by unfollows. A modern tragedy. But the real kicker came around noon when I got a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a local business article with the headline, "Chicago Entrepreneur's Business License Under Review Following Viral Incident." The article detailed how Trent's various business ventures were being investigated for financial irregularities and potential fraud. Which was definitely Daphne's handiwork, because that woman doesn't just destroy your present, she salts the earth where your future was supposed to grow. The text below the screenshot just said, "You did this." I responded, "No, you did this when you decided my wife was a tip jar. I just pointed it out with receipts." Blocked. Immediately. Which was fine, I'd said what I needed to say. Lydia, meanwhile, had gone completely underground. Social media silent, which for her was like holding her breath underwater. Her Instagram story, which usually updated 17 times a day with coffee cups and outfit selfies and inspirational quotes about being a boss babe, was completely dark. Her Facebook was deactivated. She'd even changed her LinkedIn profile picture to something generic and professional, removing the glamorous headshot that had previously been there. She was hiding from the spotlight like a vampire at noon, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. She'd sent me approximately 60 texts over the past 12 hours, each one more desperate than the last. I'm so sorry. I deleted all my social media. Monica and I aren't friends anymore. I told everyone this is my fault. I quit the book club. I'm seeing a therapist. Please, can we talk? I'll do anything. I love you. Please don't leave me. That last one hit different. Not because it changed anything, but because it was the first time she'd acknowledged that leaving was actually on the table. That this wasn't just a fight we'd get over after a week of cold shoulders and make-up sex. This was existential. This was marriage-ending level serious, and she was finally understanding that. I didn't respond to most of them. Just sent one message around 2 p.m. I need time. Stop texting. She responded with, okay. I understand. I love you. I left that one unread because I didn't know what to say. Did I still love her? Probably. Love doesn't just evaporate overnight, even when your wife becomes the centerpiece of the worst moment of your life. But did I like her right now? Did I trust her? Did I want to be married to someone who'd let this happen? Those were harder questions with messy answers. While Lydia was busy deleting her digital footprint and probably crying into wine at 3 in the afternoon, I was making moves. Business moves. The kind that feel good and also make money, which is the best kind of revenge, the kind that pays dividends. I'd been looking into Trent's restaurant investments. Turns out Mr. Entrepreneur had fancy shares in a few establishments around the city, probably bought during one of his "I'm a serious businessman" phases. Small percentages, nothing major, but enough to give him bragging rights at parties about being in the restaurant game. Those shares were purchased through his frozen business account, which meant he was suddenly very motivated to liquidate assets to pay bills. My lawyer, the angel with a flamethrower, had her contacts reach out through appropriate channels with purchase offers. Nothing illegal, nothing shady, just legitimate business transactions for someone who desperately needed liquid capital. By Friday evening, I'd acquired his shares in 3 different restaurants for roughly 60 cents on the dollar. Fair market value, considering his circumstances. Some might call it predatory. I call it capitalism with a side of karma. The best part? One of those restaurants was called Elevate, a trendy gastropub in Wicker Park that Trent had constantly posted about, acting like he was some kind of hospitality mogul. I immediately scheduled a management meeting to discuss rebranding. We were going to rename it The Last Dance, just like I'd done with the Skyline venue. Let that name haunt him across the city. Let him drive past multiple restaurants that reminded him of the night he learned that actions have consequences and consequences have me. By Saturday, Trent Monroe had gone from local entrepreneur and Instagram influencer to cautionary tale and internet punchline in less than 72 hours. His business was in shambles, his sponsors were gone, his social media was a graveyard of mockery, and I now owned pieces of his former empire. The man had been erased from relevance so thoroughly that I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered him shouting, "Your husband can disappear, I own you tonight," into a microphone at my birthday party, and the sympathy evaporated faster than his career prospects. Sunday morning, I finally agreed to meet Lydia. Not at home, not at Riley's, but at a coffee shop in neutral territory, one I didn't own, which was harder to find than you'd think. She showed up looking like she hadn't slept in days, wearing sweatpants and a northwestern hoodie, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. This was Lydia at her most vulnerable, stripped of all the Instagram polish and designer armor. We sat across from each other, either of us knowing how to start this conversation. Finally she spoke. "I deserve everything that's happened." I sipped my coffee, waiting. "Monica's not speaking to me. My family is mortified. I can't show my face anywhere without people staring." She laughed, but it came out broken. "I'm the woman from the video. That's my identity now." "Yeah," I said simply. "I know saying sorry isn't enough. I know I can't take it back." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. But I want to try. If you'll let me. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I want to fix this. And here was the moment. The crossroads. The place where I decided if our marriage was worth salvaging, or if I'd already made up my mind during those silent drives and sleepless nights. We'll try, I said finally. Counseling. Real counseling, not some life coach who'll tell us to communicate better while charging $300 an hour. Relief flooded her face. Really? Really. But Lydia, this is it. One chance. No more dares, no more letting people disrespect us, no more pretending everything's fine when it's not. One chance? She repeated. I'll take it. We sat there in silence, both knowing that even if we rebuilt this marriage, it would never be the same. The old version was dead, buried under dollar bills and viral videos. What came next would be different. Maybe better. Maybe worse. But at least it would be honest. Couples therapy is exactly as uncomfortable as you'd imagine, except worse because there's a stranger taking notes, while you explain why your marriage almost ended over dollar bills and a protein powder salesman. Our therapist, Dr. Patricia Chin, had an office that screamed. I charged $200 an hour. With its leather furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than my first car, and one of those white noise machines that's supposed to make you feel like your problems are confidential but mostly just sounds like you're inside a seashell. Week 1, we sat on opposite ends of her couch like we were strangers on a bus trying not to make eye contact. Dr. Chin looked between us with that practiced neutral expression therapists perfect in grad school and asked the question I'd been dreading. So, what brings you here today? Lydia opened her mouth, closed it, then started crying before she'd even said a word. Great start. Really setting the tone for emotional breakthroughs. I sat there feeling like a jerk for not comforting her but also not feeling like comforting her because we were literally here because she'd let another man turn her into a human tip jar at my birthday party. My wife let someone publicly humiliate me. I said flatly, because someone had to start talking and it wasn't going to be Lydia between sobs. And now the entire internet knows about it because I may have overreacted slightly by destroying his business and making him a viral meme. Dr. Chin didn't even blink. I saw the video. It's been quite popular in my office this week. Several clients have brought it up. She paused. You have very good posture in high-stress situations, Grayson. Thanks, I practice vindictive rage in the mirror. Week 2. After we'd established ground rules and paid another $400 to sit on expensive furniture, Dr. Chin finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. She looked at Lydia and said, Why did you let it happen? Lydia twisted her hands in her lap, staring at them like they held answers. I don't know. It just happened so fast. That's not good enough, I said, and Dr. Chin held up a hand to stop me from continuing. Apparently interrupting isn't therapeutic. Who knew? Lydia, Dr. Chin said gently. Let's try to dig deeper. What were you feeling in that moment? I felt. Lydia's voice cracked. Seen. Is that terrible? God, that's terrible. Grayson was busy with everyone else, being the host, being charming, and Trent was just paying attention to me. Making me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room. There it was. The truth bomb I'd been waiting for, delivered in the worst possible wrapping paper. So you let him stuff money in your dress because he made you feel noticed, I said, and yeah, it came out harsh. Meanwhile, I was busy hosting the party I'd spent 3 weeks planning for myself, wearing the suit you picked out, at the venue I chose specifically because you said you loved the view. I know! Lydia actually shouted, which startled both me and Dr. Chin. I know it was stupid. I know it makes no sense. But you want to know the truth, Grayson? The real truth? You make me feel small sometimes. Not on purpose, not maliciously, but you're just so successful. So important. You design buildings. You own half the city. You're friends with people who matter. And I'm just Lydia, who works in marketing for a company nobody's heard of and whose biggest accomplishment this year was getting our holiday campaign to go semi-viral for like 3 hours. I sat there, completely blindsided. You feel small? You're the most confident person I know. You walk into rooms like you own them. That's an act, you idiot. She was crying again, but angry crying this time. That's me pretending I belong in your world. Do you know what it's like being married to you? Everyone wants to talk to Grayson Ward, the architect, the investor, the guy who makes things happen. And I'm just the wife. The accessory. The plus one who looks good in photos. Dr. Chin was scribbling notes like she was witnessing a breakthrough, which I guess she was. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach with a dictionary of revelations. Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. Because it sounds insane. Hey honey, I'm jealous of your success and also I feel invisible isn't exactly dinner conversation. She wiped her face with the tissue Dr. Chin handed her. So when Trent paid attention to me, when he made me feel like I was someone instead of someone's wife, I just let it happen. And I didn't realize how badly I was hurting you until you walked out. Well, congratulations, I said, and I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Half of Chicago noticed you. Mission accomplished. She flinched like I'd slapped her, and Dr. Chin intervened with some therapeutic phrase about processing emotions constructively. But the damage was done, or maybe the healing had started. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. Week 3, we talked about rebuilding. Dr. Chin used words like communication, and boundaries, and mutual respect. All the things we should have been doing from the beginning but were too busy pretending everything was fine. We made agreements. Lydia would work on her self-worth issues that apparently went deeper than I'd realized. I would work on actually seeing my wife as a partner instead of just assuming she was happy because she looked good in designer dresses. If I could rebuild skyscrapers after earthquakes, I told Dr. Chin during our 4th session, I can probably rebuild a marriage after stupidity. That's very architectural of you, she said with the hint of a smile. But marriages aren't buildings, Grayson. They're living things. They need constant maintenance, not just repairs after disasters. Fair point. Annoyingly accurate point. By week 5, Lydia and I were actually talking again. Real talking, not the careful polite distance we'd been maintaining. And slowly, painfully, like putting together a puzzle with half the pieces missing, we started figuring out how to be married to each other again. 6 months later, and life looks different. Not perfect, not healed like some fairy tale ending, but different in a way that feels real. Lydia and I are still doing therapy every other week because apparently healthy marriages require maintenance, not just crisis intervention. We're cautious with each other now, careful in a way we never were before. She doesn't go to parties without me anymore, and I actually pay attention when she talks instead of mentally drafting building plans. Progress, I guess. As for Trent Monroe? Last I heard, he's selling motivational t-shirts online. His bestseller is called Stay Humble, which is irony so thick you could build a house on it. The universe has a sense of humor after all. I still get invited to charity galas and networking events, fancy rooftop parties with champagne and live bands. I politely decline every single one because honestly, nothing good ever comes from champagne, tuxedos, and dollar bills. I've learned my lesson about trusting crowds and celebrations. Last week, I ran into Trent at a gas station on the south side. Pure coincidence, the kind that makes you believe in cosmic comedy. He was pumping gas into a Honda Civic that had definitely seen better days, wearing a hoodie and looking like someone who'd learned what humility tastes like when it's force-fed to you by life. Our eyes met across the pumps. He froze, clearly deciding whether to acknowledge me or pretend he'd gone blind. I smiled, walked over casually and said, "Still own the night, buddy?" He looked away, finished pumping, and got in his car without a word. I watched him drive off, feeling nothing but mild satisfaction. Because here's what I learned. Revenge doesn't always need shouting or drama or public confrontations. Sometimes you just let silence and success do the talking. Now he knows who I am. And more importantly, I remembered who I am too.
My wife declared, "My ex is coming to my birthday. Be cool, or it's over." I replied, "I'll be very cool." Then I greeted him at the door, shook his hand, and said, "She's all yours, man." I was just leaving. Her party ended the moment I walked out. I measure life in millimeters, not moments, because moments are emotional, and emotions can't fit neatly on a blueprint. I'm Marcus Reed, 34, licensed architect, caffeine enthusiast, and apparently a man who gets turned on by a perfect 90-degree corner. My wife, Sophie Lane, is my chaotic counterpoint, half glitter bomb, half unmedicated optimism. Where I see load-bearing walls, she sees feng shui opportunities. We're the kind of couple that looks balanced from a distance and like an active construction site up close. You know that guy who triple-checks the level on a picture frame? That's me. You know that woman who says it's fine while sticking decals on freshly painted walls? That's her. Marriage, ladies and gentlemen, a partnership between precision and chaos, held together by shared Wi-Fi and mild denial. Now, I was building something special, her birthday. Not just any birthday, but the one that would make her friends clutch pearls and whisper, "He really gets her." I didn't want another backyard vibe with warm white lights and half-deflated balloons. No, sir. I wanted architectural glory, a domestic masterpiece that screamed, "Thoughtful husband," and whispered, "I outplanned God." I had an idea that would fuse my profession with romance, a fully automated house system I coded myself, called Aurora. Imagine Alexa on steroids, with mood lighting that could sense conversation tone, music that faded with applause, and timed LED bursts for her cake entrance. I even gave it a voice, calm, gender-neutral, slightly smug. Aurora was my love letter written in binary. Sophie thought I was joking when I said I wanted a lighting rehearsal, but I wasn't. Thursday night before the party, I stood in the living room with a laser measurer, whispering to myself like a lunatic. Angle of dispersion, 45 degrees. Beam intensity, check. Ambient loop, God, that's beautiful. Meanwhile, Sophie was on the couch, painting her nails red and scrolling Pinterest like a general planning a glitter invasion. "Babe, maybe people don't need to feel like they're entering the Met Gala," she teased. "Maybe they just need drinks and fun." I looked up from my tablet and said the nerdiest words known to marriage. Fun is relative to design symmetry. She groaned so hard the thermostat adjusted itself out of pity. Still, I was in my element, curating the guest list like I was assembling the Avengers of suburban sociability. Her work friends, my colleagues, her yoga pals, the neighbor who thinks kombucha is wine. Everyone who ever thought Sophie and I were the perfect match. I made spreadsheets for snacks, timeline charts for speeches, and a social flow plan that mapped traffic between the kitchen and the patio like it was an evacuation drill. I even labeled the bathroom door with a minimalist vinyl sign that said "Relief Zone." I'm not proud, but I'm also not ashamed. The crowning jewel, though, was the bar cart. A rolling temple of liquors and liqueurs, curated with the seriousness of a museum exhibit. I had bourbon that smelled like burnt oak and self-respect, gin infused with herbs I couldn't pronounce, and a champagne cooler that hummed softly, like it knew it was above me in social rank. I imagined Sophie walking in, her eyes lighting up at the spectacle. I pictured her saying, "Marcus, you didn't have to do all this," and me pretending to be modest while secretly hoping she'd nominate me for Husband of the Year. The dream was alive. The dream was laminated. Now, Sophie, God bless her, wasn't ungrateful. She loved the effort. She really did. She'd run her fingers along my printed floor plan and go, "This is why I married you. You make order look sexy." But she also had that twinkle, that mischievous, "what if we just," energy that gave me ulcers. Like when she once moved my drafting table to make room for more creativity. Creativity apparently needed the northeast corner where my sanity used to live. But fine. That's marriage. A constant redesign you didn't approve, but somehow signed. I kept rehearsing my casual host, look in the mirror. You know, the one that says, "Oh, this old thing?" Just a world-class party I threw between errands. I practiced hand gestures too. Casual hand in pocket, welcoming smile, confident nod to the playlist. I wanted to look like a man in control of chaos. My reflection, however, looked like a man auditioning for a toothpaste commercial while dying inside. Sophie walked in mid-pose. You good? She asked, eyebrow raised. Totally, I lied. Just visualizing success. You look like you're trying to sell a timeshare, she said, grabbing a snack. Love is honesty, even when it's brutal. Then came the moment that shifted the entire architectural balance of my peaceful existence. 3 days before the party, Tuesday afternoon, I was in my office, reviewing final catering emails. Sophie strolled in wearing joggers, hair up, holding a pair of scissors and a coupon book. She looked like every suburban goddess who multitasks between domesticity and mild destruction. Hey babe, she said sweetly, clipping away. Quick thing. You know those 2 words, quick thing, that precede emotional earthquakes? Yeah. What's up? I asked, distracted by an invoice. She snipped, smiled, and said, Theo's in town. He's coming to my birthday. Be cool, or it's over. Snip. Like she was trimming my sanity. Now, a sane man would have asked questions. Who's Theo again? Why him? Why now? But see, when your wife drops the name of her ex like it's a +1 on an invite, your brain short-circuits. I blinked, recalibrated, and finally said, I'll be very cool. My voice was so calm it scared even me. Sophie tilted her head, testing me like a science project. You sure? Absolutely, I said. Colder than a freezer sale in February. She laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. The architect in me was already drafting emotional blueprints, stress load, tension lines, possible exits. Be cool, or it's over. A simple condition, like being told to juggle knives for love. Later that night, I sat on the couch, staring at Aurora's LED strip pulsing softly in rhythm with my anxiety. I thought about Theo, her ex, her once-upon-a-time heartache, the man who smelled like expensive cologne and emotional instability. I'd seen him once at a charity event years ago. The guy had cheekbones that could cut drywall and the smirk of someone who's never heard the word no. Sophie swore they were ancient history, a museum exhibit closed for good. But now he was suddenly in town, like a sequel no one asked for. I tried to rationalize. Maybe she wanted closure. Maybe she wanted to prove something. To me, to herself, to the universe that thinks exes should remain theoretical. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about Theo. It was about control. Sophie's world runs on chaos management. My stability bores her. Her spontaneity terrifies me. We're like 2 apps that look compatible but crash when opened together. And yet, I loved her. Enough to plan a party, code a system, and pretend that be cool or it's over wasn't emotional terrorism wrapped in lipstick. That night, while she slept, I found myself measuring the kitchen island again, just to feel grounded. Tape out, pencil behind ear, whispering numbers like prayers. I told myself, you're fine, you're cool, you're precise. But the truth was, the man with the measure tape had just realized there are no exact dimensions for betrayal waiting to happen. You can measure a wall. You can calculate stress load. But you can't draft a blueprint for staying calm when your wife invites the ghost of relationships past to your house party. Still, I told myself I'd handle it. I'd host, smile, and be the architectural embodiment of chill. Because I'd made a promise, to her, to myself, and to the slightly judgmental smart system blinking softly in the corner. Aurora's lights glowed blue, almost like they knew what was coming. Machines, at least, understand structure. People, not so much. I turned off the lights, set down the tape, and whispered to the dark. All right, Marcus. Be cool. Be very, very cool. You ever had someone throw a grenade at your sanity and call it communication? That was Sophie that Tuesday. The woman had a PhD in casual chaos. Theo's coming to my birthday. Be cool, or it's over, she'd said while clipping coupons for almond milk. No emotion. Just snip, snip, apocalypse. And like the idiot husband I am, I smiled and said, sure, babe. Because when your marriage starts sounding like an HR warning, you go into survival mode. I wasn't ready to die on Coupon Hill. Not yet. I tried to rationalize. Maybe she just wanted to prove to herself that she was over him. That she could coexist with Theo, the man who once wrote her a song called Sophie's Soulfire, and uploaded it to SoundCloud like the world needed more acoustic regret. Or maybe she wanted me to prove something. My chill, my composure, my emotional growth. Translation: she wanted to see if I'd melt down in front of people holding mojitos. But I'm an architect. Meltdowns are for weak structures and soft concrete. I'd been reinforced by caffeine, mild resentment, and 2 decades of quiet childhood disappointment. Still, that night I sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the half-eaten lasagna she'd reheated, thinking about all the ways I could screw this up. Theo wasn't just an ex, he was the ex. The guy who bought her a Vespa in college and crashed it into a farmer's market. The guy who found himself backpacking in Thailand and came home with a man bun and a tattoo that said breathe. Sophie used to talk about him like he was a comet, brilliant, fast, and likely to cause a mess on impact. And now the comet was back in orbit. "Marcus, you're quiet," she said, sipping wine like it was a truth serum. "Just processing," I said. "Processing what?" "Geometry," I lied. "Right?" she said, smirking. "You're mad." "No," I said, "I'm calculating." She laughed and said, "You always think love is math." I smiled. "And you always think math is optional." She rolled her eyes. "Be cool, Marcus. It's just Theo." Just Theo. Like he was a harmless lab experiment instead of the human equivalent of a pop-up ad for poor decisions. I went to bed early, pretending I was fine. She stayed up watching Netflix with that faint smirk, the one she uses when she's planning chaos. I could practically hear her thinking, let's see if he can really handle this. Oh, I could handle it. But she wouldn't like the version of cool she was about to get. The next day at work, I told Ben, my best friend, office mate, and part-time therapist, about it. He dropped his pen like it was allergic to drama. "Wait," he said. "You're telling me your wife invited her ex to her birthday and told you to be cool or it's over?" "Bro, that's not an ultimatum. That's emotional CrossFit." "Yeah," I said, rubbing my temples. "I think I'm supposed to pass some kind of loyalty exam." "You sure she's not setting you up for an episode of Marriage? The deleted scenes?" "Feels like it," I said. Ben leaned back, smirking. "So, what's the plan, Mr. Architect? Build a bridge over your rage." "No," I said, sipping bad office coffee. "I'm going to host the best damn party she's ever seen. And I'm going to be calm. So calm, it'll disturb her." "You're going to play psychological judo?" "Exactly," I said. "Use her chaos against her." Ben chuckled. "You're insane." "I'm married," I corrected. By Thursday, Sophie was in full party mode. Hair appointments, nails, texts flying like confetti. I overheard her talking to her friend Alana on speaker. "Yeah, he said he's fine with it. Totally calm. Like, weirdly calm." Alana laughed. "Girl, that's not calm. That's volcano energy." "Maybe," Sophie said, "but he'll be cool. I know him." I smiled from the hallway like a man who knew she didn't know me at all. That night, I came home to find her trying on dresses in front. Friday night arrived with the kind of pressure you can't see but can definitely smell, like fresh paint and emotional tension. I'd spent the last 48 hours pretending to be zen while secretly plotting social survival. Aurora, my smart home system and borderline child substitute, hummed softly in pre-party readiness. Lights, check. Music, check. Airflow calibrated for optimal mingling comfort. Everything was set. Even the scent diffuser was working overtime, pumping cedar calm through the vents like I was trying to seduce an entire forest. By 7 p.m., my living room looked like a modern art exhibit titled Overcompensation in beige. I stood there in my dark blue shirt, sleeves rolled, confidence faked, thinking, if she wanted proof I could be cool, I might as well win an Oscar for it. Sophie floated downstairs 20 minutes late, wearing that red dress again, the one that could start arguments in church parking lots. She looked stunning, and also armed. Her perfume hit the air before her voice did. "You ready?" she asked. "For what?" I said. "The party or the apocalypse." She smirked. Same difference. The doorbell rang like it had been waiting its whole life for drama. Guests trickled in. Ben showed up first, naturally. He was the kind of friend who knew when to bring snacks and when to bring sarcasm. He took one look at me and said, "You look like a man pretending he's not waiting for his wife's ex." "That's because I am," I said. "Help yourself to the bourbon before I start biting electrical cords." Next came Maya, Sophie's college friend, dressed like she had a podcast about astrology and bad decisions. "Oh my God, Marcus, this place looks amazing," she said. "It's so curated." "Thank you," I said, fighting the urge to bow. I used anxiety as my interior designer. The music was perfect, soft jazz giving way to indie pop, transitioning exactly on cue. Aurora was running smooth, like the obedient little algorithm it was. The guests laughed, clinked glasses, and complimented the lighting. "How do you make the ceiling glow like that?" someone asked. "It's called emotional compensation through LED, I said. They laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. Then came Will, my coworker, the kind of guy who can't resist a dad joke. "Man, this place looks like an HGTV fever dream," he said, handing me a bottle of whiskey. "And I mean that in the best way." "Thanks," I said. "Wait till you see the synchronized candle sequence at dessert." "You choreograph candles?" "Of course," I said. "Doesn't everyone?" The crowd thickened, and the vibe got louder. Sophie was glowing, laughing, greeting guests, taking selfies like she was running for office. She was in her element, adored, admired, and photographed. And for a while, I let myself believe we were okay. I was handing out drinks, playing host, cracking jokes. Ben was chatting up Maya. Will was telling some story about an HVAC disaster. And I, the man with the measure tape, was holding it together with duct-taped composure. Then, at exactly 9:07 p.m., because of course I checked, the doorbell rang again. The final guest. The one my stomach had been rehearsing for. Sophie's eyes flickered. "Be cool," she mouthed. And like a well-trained robot, I smiled. "Always," I said. I opened the door, and there he was, Theo. The myth. The legend. The walking cologne commercial. The guy had the audacity to look good. Crisp shirt, smug grin, hair doing that effortless, I just left a yacht thing. "Marcus," he said, extending a hand. "Man, it's been forever." "Forever implies we've met more than once," I said, shaking his hand anyway. He laughed like I'd said something charming instead of slightly homicidal. "Fair enough. Great setup you've got here." "Thanks," I said. "It's mostly steel, glass, and suppressed emotion." He handed me a bottle of red wine. Imported, expensive, and somehow passive-aggressive. Sophie appeared behind me, smile turned up to 11. "Theo," she said, hugging him. And that hug lasted just a beat too long. I counted. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3. Too damn many Mississippis. I smiled like a man watching someone pet his dog without permission. "Wow, you look amazing," Theo said to her. "Red always was your color." "Still is," she said. "Marcus likes it too." "I bet he does," Theo said. "Sure," I replied. "I love red. Especially when it's paired with restraint." Ben, standing behind me, coughed into his drink to hide a laugh. Theo strolled in like he'd been invited to the White House. He had that vibe of a guy who orders for everyone at restaurants and tips badly. He looked around, admiring my work. "Man, this place is intense," he said. "You always this detailed?" "Only when I care," I said. "Then again, I've been told I overbuild things." "Overbuild," he repeated. "That's a good problem to have. Not if you're the one footing the bill," I said, smiling sharp enough to slice glass. Sophie introduced him around. Guests fawned. The room buzzed with the kind of energy that makes you want to check your blood pressure. I stayed near the bar, pretending to study drink ratios while actually timing interactions. Theo was charming in that I peaked at 28 way. He told travel stories, dropped humble brags like confetti, and laughed too loudly at his own jokes. At one point, I caught Sophie touching his arm lightly. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was choreography. Either way, I started stirring my drink like it owed me money. Maya sidled up next to me. "So that's the infamous Theo, huh?" "Yup. He's tall. He's vertical," I said flatly. "Impressive, huh?" "He's fine," she said, sipping her wine. "But you? You're terrifyingly calm." "It's unnerving." "Good," I said. "That's the goal." The night rolled on like a slow-motion parade of passive-aggressive smiles. At 9:45, the playlist shifted to the dance section. Sophie had requested it. Her moment. She grabbed Theo's hand to pull him toward the dance floor. He hesitated. I watched. "Come on," she said. "It's just one dance." The crowd cheered. Of course, they did. I sipped my bourbon, half human, half volcano. Then something remarkable happened. Aurora, sweet, loyal, AI Aurora. Misread the decibel spike as an argument cue. It dimmed the lights to serious mood and switched the music to Claire de Lune. The room went quiet. Sophie froze mid-laugh, Theo mid-step. And well, I might have smiled a little too wide. "Oops," I said, tapping my phone. "System glitch. Happens sometimes when it senses tension." "There's no tension." Sophie snapped. "Of course not," I said. "My mistake." People laughed awkwardly. Theo chuckled. You're a funny guy, Marcus. I'm professionally ironic, I said. Sophie shot me a glare that could melt rebar. I raised my glass and toasted the crowd. To love, technology, and flawless communication. Ben groaned quietly behind me. By 10 p.m., I'd hit my personal limit for emotional endurance. Theo was still talking. Sophie was still glowing. And I was one jazz chord away from spontaneous combustion. But damn it, I was cool. Ice cold. Antarctica with dimmers. I caught Ben's eye across the room. He mouthed, "You good?" I nodded. "Totally fine," I mouthed back. And somehow, I meant it. Because deep down, I knew something Sophie didn't. Every structure can handle only so much load before the cracks start showing. And tonight, she'd just handed me the blueprint for hers. The candles flickered. The guests laughed. And I stood there in my perfectly lit, emotionally fragile living room, sipping bourbon and thinking, the calm before the storm really does have great lighting. There's a specific kind of silence that hits right before a disaster, like the world's holding its breath, waiting to see if you'll embarrass yourself publicly. That was the silence that wrapped around me the moment Theo walked through my front door, hugged my wife, and held on a beat too long. You know when you can actually hear a hug. The faint shuffle of clothes, the deep exhale, the subtle, "I've missed this" energy? Yeah, I heard that. And because I'm a gentleman raised on sarcasm and repressed fury, I smiled through it like a damn saint. "Hey, man, glad you could make it," I said, voice all honey and homicide. "She's all yours, man. I was just leaving." The words came out smoother than whiskey and twice as dangerous. Now, I didn't plan to say that. It wasn't in my script. The line just appeared, like divine intervention from the patron saint of petty husbands. I saw Sophie's face freeze, that practiced hostess smile twitching like a faulty neon sign. The entire room paused. It was like someone hit mute on life. Then came the tiny sounds of chaos. A glass clinked, someone coughed, a phone camera accidentally clicked. Ben's eyes went wide from across the room, mouthing, "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" I didn't answer. I was too busy zipping up my jacket like a man clocking out of an emotional factory. See, Sophie had told me to be cool. And I was. Just not the flavor she'd ordered. She meant compliant cool, the kind that smiles while dying inside. I chose thermodynamic cool, absolute zero. The kind of cool that freezes the air. I'd promised to be calm, and in that moment, calm looked like surrender with a smirk. Sophie blinked at me, her mascara trembling with rage. "Marcus, what are you doing?" she whispered. "Leaving," I said simply. "You said you wanted me to be cool. I'm being so cool. I'm literally stepping outside." Theo chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hey man, don't take off on our account." I turned to him, smiling like a man about to make a toast. "Theo, buddy, I'm not taking off. I'm giving you space. You've clearly been waiting for this reunion longer than I have." Gasps. Literal gasps. You could feel the oxygen leaving the room, replaced by the scent of awkwardness and cheap cologne. Ben looked like he wanted to tackle me. Maya, bless her gossipy soul, was already texting someone. Sophie's lips pressed into a line so tight it could cut glass. "Marcus," she said in that low, trembling voice women use before either forgiving or killing you. "This isn't funny." "No," I said, picking up my jacket from the chair, "but it's honest. I'm giving you what you wanted, me not ruining your night." And then I did it. I put on my jacket like a man in a slow-motion movie scene, every button click echoing through the room. I even took a second to smooth the collar. Theatrics matter. "You guys enjoy," I said, heading toward the door. Drinks are free, the playlist's automatic, and the thermostat has a better sense of boundaries than I do. Ben stood halfway up, whispering, "Dude, wait." "Nah," I said, "let her sparkle." Sophie followed me a few steps, heels clicking, voice trembling between anger and panic. "Marcus, don't you dare leave me with this." "With what?" I interrupted, turning back. "The consequence of your own chaos? Relax. I'm not storming off. I'm gracefully evacuating." "You're humiliating me," she hissed. "No, babe," I said, smiling gently. "I'm giving the audience what they came for, authenticity." Theo tried again, bless his overconfident soul. "Hey man, it's really not that serious. We're all adults here." "You're right," I said, stepping closer. "That's why I'm walking out instead of flipping the buffet table." He blinked, taken aback. "Okay, that's fair. Glad we agree," I said, patting his shoulder with the firm politeness of a man adjusting a painting slightly off-center. Then I turned back to the crowd, my guests, my curated chaos, and gave a short bow. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the evening. If anyone asks, tell them I finally learned how to let go. And with that, I left. The hallway outside was colder than I expected. My footsteps echoed, dramatic as hell, and honestly, it felt good. Not just good, liberating. Like unbuckling a seatbelt after a turbulence-filled flight. Inside, I could still hear muffled chatter, the low buzz of confusion, and Sophie's voice trying to salvage the night. I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. Twisted, dark, satisfying peace. In the lobby, I leaned against the wall, exhaling. Ben texted almost immediately. Bro, what the actual hell? I replied, being cool, remember? He sent back 3 dots. Then, you are either a genius or divorced by Monday. I smirked. Why not both? I sat there for a bit, jacket half-zipped, watching people come and go. Some tenants passed me, nodding politely. Rough night, one old man asked, holding his dog's leash. You could say that, I said. Anniversary gone wrong. Birthday, I replied. Always worse, he said, shuffling off. I gave him a mental fist bump. Wisdom recognizes wisdom. I checked Aurora's system from my phone. Everything still ran perfectly. Lights were pulsing in perfect sync. Music still flowing. The party would go on, until I decided it wouldn't. Because if you think I'd let my wife's ex dance under my lighting design, you don't know me. So I sat there, smirking, and thumbed a little line of code I'd written weeks ago as a joke. Quiet_mode.sh. A tap, a slide, and boom, Aurora began its silent protest. Inside, lights dimmed to funeral chic. Music hiccuped, faded, then died completely. What remained was awkward silence and LED white glare, every insecurity under a spotlight. I didn't have to be there to see it. I could imagine the scene like a cinematic masterpiece. Sophie fuming, Theo pretending to fix the vibe, guests making excuses to leave early. Art, really? My phone buzzed. Ben again. Dude, lights just went out. Did you? I texted back. System sensitive to tension. Must have overloaded. You're insane, he replied. You love it, I wrote. A little, he admitted. A few minutes later, another text, this one from Sophie. Marcus, turn it back on now. Then another. This isn't funny. And a third. People are leaving. I stared at the screen, chuckled, and replied, You said be cool. I'm cool. Ice cold. She didn't answer. Instead, Aurora sent me an alert. Manual override attempt detected. I imagined her mashing the buttons, probably yelling at Theo for touching things wrong. Which, let's be honest, was on brand. I leaned back in the chair, grinning at my phone like a villain in a rom-com. Sometimes revenge doesn't need yelling. It just needs silence, bad lighting, and a well-timed exit. I didn't slash tires or throw punches. I just pulled the plug literally. After 10 minutes of lobby peace, I stood up, stretched, and walked out into the cool night air. The city hummed quietly, the way it does when everyone else is busy pretending they're fine. I wasn't pretending. For the first time in months, I was fine. Sophie's be cool ultimatum had turned into my emancipation. I found a little corner bar 2 blocks away, one of those places with sticky floors and beer prices that feel like time travel. The bartender looked up. Rough night, he asked. Nah, I said, sliding onto a stool. Just cooling off. He poured me a whiskey like he'd seen this movie before. Celebrating or surviving? Both, I said. Ben called, voice low but laughing. You're trending in our friend group, he said. Half think you snapped, half think you ascended. Let's go with ascended, I said. What's the damage? Party's dead, he said. Theo tried to fix the vibe, which made it worse. Sophie's furious. Maya's live tweeting it. We'll stole your hummus. He deserves it, I said. He's been through enough PowerPoint meetings to earn that hummus. You're unbelievable, Ben said, chuckling. What now? Now, I said, raising my glass. Now I enjoy my masterpiece. You can't buy moments like this, Ben. You engineer them. He laughed again. You're gonna regret this tomorrow. Maybe, I said. But tonight, I'm free. Free and hydrated. I hung up, took another sip, and thought about the irony. Architects are trained to build things that last. But sometimes, demolition is the most beautiful part of the process. And as I sat there, whiskey in hand, the faint glow of my phone still lighting up with angry messages. I couldn't help but smile. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting to Sophie's chaos. I was redesigning it. When I walked out of that apartment, I thought I'd made a clean escape, like the protagonist in a heist movie who slides into the getaway car before the credits roll. But apparently, my movie had a post-credit scene, and it involved Sophie Lane Reed having a meltdown in 4K. I didn't see it firsthand, but thanks to the miracle of text messages, panicked voicemails, and Ben's live commentary, I got a front row seat anyway. Ben was my informant. Every 5 minutes, another update buzzed through my phone like dispatches from a sinking ship. She's trying to fix the lights. Then, Theo's touching your control panel. Bro followed by, never mind, he broke something. And then finally, everyone's pretending to help, but also slowly leaving. It's like the Titanic, but with Costco wine. I sat in the lobby, feet up on a coffee table, scrolling through the chaos with the satisfaction of a man watching karma arrive on time. The building's soft ambient lighting flickered faintly from my command app, my beautiful, slightly vengeful creation, Aurora. When I'd built the system, I never imagined it would one day serve as the world's most polite revenge weapon. Yet here we were, smart home, dumb guests, poetic justice. I could picture it perfectly. Sophie, the self-proclaimed queen of social grace, trapped under the unflattering glow of harsh LED white. Her friends whispering, her ex awkwardly holding a wine glass like a peace offering, and that weird AI voice chiming out from the ceiling. Aurora has entered safe mode. Safe for who? Definitely not for her reputation. And the guests? Oh, I knew how guests behave when a party dies. They start doing the polite vanish. You know that move? The one where someone says, "We really should get going." And suddenly 15 other people discover they also have places to be? One couple pretends to have a babysitter waiting. Another claims their parking meter's about to expire even though we all live in the same building. Within minutes, the room empties faster than a buffet after the shrimp runs out. By the time Ben came down to the lobby to join me, the night had turned into a slow-motion implosion. He sat beside me, still holding a half-full drink. "You're an evil genius," he said. "I just witnessed social homicide." I grinned. "Oh, I know. Tell me everything." He leaned back, shaking his head. "So, first, Theo tries to play hero. He walks over to your control tablet like he knows what he's doing. He's poking buttons, saying stuff like, "I do tech consulting sometimes." Bro didn't even find the power button. Aurora started flashing, and then the thermostat jumped from 72 to 68. It was like watching a frat boy try to defuse a bomb. I snorted into my drink. "And Sophie?" "Oh man," he said, laughing. "She's pacing. She keeps saying, 'Marcus must have done this.' And everyone's like, 'No, no, it's just a glitch.' But you can see it in her eyes. She knows." I raised my glass. "To beautiful inevitability." Ben clinked his cup against mine. "You really are something else, you know that?" Most guys would have yelled. "Thrown something." "You weaponized interior design." "Precision, my friend," I said. "Revenge is best served on a dimmer." He laughed so hard he spilled a little whiskey. "You're gonna regret this tomorrow." "Nah," I said. "Regret requires doubt. I have none left." My phone buzzed again. Sophie. Voicemail this time. I put it on speaker, because why not share the entertainment? "Marcus." Her voice snapped through the speaker, shaky but furious. "Turn it back on. You're acting like a child. People are leaving. You've embarrassed me." She took a breath. "You always do this. You make everything about control. You don't even know how to let go." I ended the message with a tap and said, "Well, she's half right." Ben chuckled. "You're enjoying this too much." "Ben," I said, leaning back, "I've been married 6 years. I've earned this one night of unholy satisfaction." Then, because poetic timing is a real thing, the building's elevator dinged, and out stepped none other than Sophie herself. Red dress, heels in hand, makeup perfect except for one streak down her cheek that said mascara met meltdown. "Oh, this is gonna be good," Ben muttered. She spotted me instantly. "Marcus," she snapped, striding over. "What did you do?" I looked up calmly. "I followed your instructions. I was cool." "Cool," she said, voice rising. "You hijacked the entire party." I shrugged. "No, the party hijacked itself. I just rebalanced the power grid." She threw her hands up. "You're impossible. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Even Theo said it was childish. Well, I said, finishing my drink. If Theo's the moral compass, I think we're all lost. Marcus, she hissed, you made me look insane. Oh, sweetheart, I said, you didn't need my help for that. Ben snorted so loud he had to pretend to cough. Sophie shot him a death glare. Do you mind? She said. Not at all, he said, raising his glass. I live for this kind of theater. She turned back to me, shaking her head. You're pathetic. You think this is funny. I stood, buttoning my jacket again for dramatic effect. Funny? No. Hilarious? Absolutely. She stepped closer. You think you've won something? No, I said. Winning would imply there was still a game. This is just credits rolling. That one landed. She froze, eyes blinking rapidly, like her brain was buffering. You're leaving me? She whispered. I sighed. Sophie, you told me to be cool, or it's over. I chose cool. Congratulations, we both got what we wanted. For a second, she looked like she might cry. Then she did that thing she always does, straightened her shoulders, and switched to performance mode. Fine, she said. If you want to walk away, walk away. Don't expect me to chase you. I won't, I said. Running shoes aren't my aesthetic. She stared at me for a beat, then spun on her heel and stormed out of the lobby, muttering something about emotional robots and therapy. Ben waited until the doors slammed shut before saying, You're really not going after her, huh? Nope. You sure? Ben, I built an entire smart home just to avoid surprises. I'm sure. He nodded slowly, sipping the last of his drink. Man, you just turned your marriage into a TED Talk on boundaries. Good, I said. Maybe I'll finally get an audience that listens. We sat there in silence for a bit, watching the building's reflection in the glass doors. The rain started, light at first, then steady. Somewhere above us, Aurora hummed quietly, back in standby mode. It was almost peaceful. Ben finally said, So what now? Now, I said, I go upstairs, grab my essentials, and check into a hotel. She can have the apartment for the night. Call it my final act of generosity. He nodded. You want me to come with? I smiled. Nah, go home to your wife. Tell her you witnessed a man finally get his PhD in detachment. Ben laughed, clapped my shoulder, and left. I waited a few more minutes before heading back upstairs. The hallway was quiet, eerily so. I opened the door to the apartment, and wow, it looked like a battlefield between pride and chaos. Half-empty wine glasses on every surface, balloons sagging in defeat, the faint smell of burned hors d'oeuvres hanging in the air. Aurora's voice chimed softly as I entered. Welcome back, Marcus. Would you like to resume party mode? No, I said. Let's retire party mode forever. Understood, it replied. I walked through the wreckage, surveying the remains. Sophie's friends had left their purses, scarves, and one lonely stiletto behind, like survivors fleeing a sinking cruise ship. On the counter sat the bottle of red wine Theo brought, unopened. Typical. Even his gifts were performative. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Theo himself. Hey man, no hard feelings. She was really upset. You two should talk. I stared at it for a full minute, then replied, Appreciate the concern. Maybe next time, stick to hugging your own date. He didn't answer. I started packing my essentials. Laptop, chargers, toiletries, a few shirts. The important stuff. As I zipped the bag, I noticed something on the counter, a birthday card. Not from me. The handwriting was too loopy, too sentimental. Inside, it said, You'll always be the spark that started my fire. Love, T. Of course. Theo had brought a card. Who the hell brings a love note to a married woman's birthday party? My first instinct was to tear it in half. My second was to frame it as evidence in future therapy. Instead, I left it right there on the counter. Let it sit like the rotten cherry on top of a melting sundae. Before I left, I poured myself one last drink from the bar cart, the bourbon I'd saved for the toast that never happened. I raised the glass toward the ceiling camera. Aurora, I said, play something for the end. Playlist selection? The AI asked. Anything poetic. A beat of silence, then the soft instrumental of Frank Sinatra's That's Life filled the empty room. I laughed out loud. Perfect. I sipped, looked around, and whispered, You did good, Marcus. You stayed cool. Walking out for the second time that night felt different. Earlier, it was defiance. Now, it was closure. No anger. No adrenaline. Just the sweet satisfaction of a man who finally realized that sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. I locked the door behind me, headed for the elevator, and didn't look back. The next morning, Ben texted me again. Newsflash, Theo left at midnight. Sophie's crying to her mom, and half the guests are gossiping in a group chat called That Party Though. You're basically a legend. I sent him a thumbs up emoji. Then, for good measure, a coffee cup. Because legends, apparently, need caffeine. Sitting in the hotel lobby, I replayed the night in my head. Every scene, every petty line, every small victory. And weirdly, I didn't feel proud or ashamed. I just felt done. Like a man who'd finally stopped trying to build a skyscraper out of someone else's chaos. Maybe the party lost power that night. But me? I finally switched mine back on. The morning after the great power outage of Sophie's birthday bash, my phone looked like it had survived a digital riot. 43 text messages, 12 missed calls, and an assortment of emojis that read like emotional Morse code. If drama had a font, it'd be bold, red, and all caps, and Sophie used every variation. My favorite message was time-stamped 2:14 a.m. You are cruel, you manipulative architect of misery. To which I replied at 6:03 a.m. Technically, yes. Architect is my profession. The silence after that was delicious. By 9 a.m., the text had shifted tone, from furious to tragic. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then, you humiliated Theo. Good. You made me look insane. Unnecessary effort on my part. Do you even care about what we had? Depends on the blueprint. Then the piece de resistance. I can't believe you weaponized a thermostat. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. The phrase, weaponized a thermostat, should have come with a copyright. I didn't reply again, not because I didn't want to, but because I had entered the most peaceful state known to man, postmarital apathy. That serene, untouchable calm where someone's rage bounces off you like hail on a steel roof. The kind of peace monks envy. Around 11 a.m., I decided to check in on Aurora's diagnostics because, well, engineers cope through maintenance. The system report said everything was fine. Party mode, completed. Emotional fallout, undetermined. Even my AI had learned sarcasm by proximity. Then came a call from Sophie's mom, Daria. The woman had the energy of a talk show host and the subtlety of an air horn. Marcus, honey, she began, voice dripping with guilt weapon butter. What did you do last night? I enforced silence, I said simply. I heard you shut the power off during her party. I shut the vibe off, I corrected. The power was just collateral damage. She sighed dramatically. You're both being ridiculous. You need to apologize. Why? Because marriage isn't about winning. No, I said. But it's definitely about not losing to Theo. She gasped like I'd used profanity in a church. That's not funny. Neither is hosting your ex in your marital home, I said, leaning back. But here we are. Daria muttered something about pride and immaturity, which I mentally translated to you hurt my daughter's ego. I let her monologue until she ran out of parental fuel. Marcus, she finally said, if you keep acting like this, she's going to do something drastic. Like what? Invite another ex to brunch. Click. She hung up. I took a long sip of coffee and muttered, worth it. The rest of the day unfolded like an experimental therapy session in detachment. I worked remotely from the hotel lounge, sketching designs for a mid-century office renovation. My brain was happy. Lines, proportions, symmetry, order. Unlike my marriage, blueprints never gaslight you. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up uninvited, which meant he was worried or bored. He plopped down beside me, holding 2 coffees. You look too calm, he said. That's suspicious. I'm fine, I said. No one who says, I'm fine in that tone is fine. I shrugged. I'm adjusting. He sipped his coffee. So she's blowing up your phone? Like a fireworks finale. And you're just ignoring it? Yep. Bold. Therapeutic. He leaned in. You realize this isn't over, right? She's gonna escalate. I chuckled. Ben, the only thing she can escalate at this point is her own imagination. You say that now, he said. But chaos loves company. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. New message. I'm coming over. Ben grinned. Chaos RSVP'd. I stared at the text. Then typed. Not a good idea. She replied instantly. You can't stop me. I typed back. Aurora can. Ben snorted coffee out his nose. You're diabolical. Thank you, I said. I try. An hour later, the universe tested my patience. Sophie showed up at the hotel lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity who'd just been canceled. She marched toward me like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. We're talking, she declared. I gestured to the chair. Proceed, Your Honor. She sat down with a sigh. You think this is funny, don't you? I think it's poetic. You humiliated me. Correction. You hosted your ex at our home and humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting. God, you're impossible, she groaned. Why do you always need to be right? It's not about being right, I said. It's about refusing to be wronged in surround sound. She blinked, thrown off by my calm. You've lost your mind. No, I said. I've found my peace. Peace, she scoffed. You're sleeping in a hotel, Marcus. Exactly, I said, sipping my drink. Peace is a king-sized bed with no passive-aggressive snoring beside it. Her jaw dropped. I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe I didn't say it sooner. She shook her head, exhaling sharply. So that's it. You're done. I'm done being the project manager of your drama. You think you're perfect? Oh no, I said. I'm insufferable, but at least I'm consistent. For a second, she didn't say anything. Her eyes softened, just slightly. I didn't invite Theo to hurt you, she said quietly. I just wanted to prove we could all be adults. I tilted my head. You invited your ex who once proposed to you in a Chili's parking lot. That's not adulthood. That's nostalgia with bad lighting. She blinked back tears. You make everything sound so cold. That's because you confuse warmth with chaos, I said gently. You think noise means life. I think silence means peace. She stared at me for a long time. You really don't love me anymore, do you? I love you, I said. I just stopped volunteering for the circus. The tears finally fell. And damn it, part of me wanted to reach across and comfort her. But the logical part reminded me that empathy was how this cycle restarted. So I sat still. I let her cry. After a while, she sniffed and said, You're heartless. I smiled sadly. No, Sophie. I just stopped letting you set the temperature. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, leaning forward. For years, you controlled the emotional thermostat in this marriage. You decided when we were warm, when we were cold, when we boiled. Last night, I finally realized I could just turn the damn thing off. She looked away. You're proud of that. I'm relieved. Her voice cracked. So what, that's it? You want a divorce? I want my peace, I said. If divorce is the invoice, I'll pay it. She stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but I'll regret it in quiet. She stormed off, heels clicking across the marble floor. People stared. I didn't care. I just sat there, breathing. Ben texted 2 minutes later. She's gone. Gone, I replied. You okay? Better than the thermostat. That night, alone in the hotel room, I poured myself a drink and thought about her words. Heartless. Maybe she was right. But when you've spent years managing someone else's chaos, sometimes detachment feels like freedom, not cruelty. I picked up my phone and, for the first time all day, opened Aurora's app. The system's mood log still showed last night's chaos metrics, spikes in volume, temperature fluctuations, lighting anomalies. But under it, one line stood out. User override detected. Emotional climate stabilization. I laughed quietly. Even the algorithm was rooting for me. Still, there was a flicker of guilt. Sophie wasn't evil. She was just built for drama, and I was built for design. She saw life in fireworks. I saw it in floor plans. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building together. I just kept maintaining while she kept redecorating. At midnight, I texted her one last time. We should talk. Calmly. No reply. Fair enough. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and went home, not to reconcile, but to gather my things. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. It smelled like perfume and resentment. The counter was still covered in party debris, half-eaten cupcakes, a tipped-over champagne flute, and one lonely balloon clinging to the ceiling like a ghost of bad decisions. Aurora greeted me softly. Welcome home, Marcus. Emotional readings, moderate tension detected. Good eye, I said. There was a note on the table in Sophie's handwriting. We need space. Don't contact me for a few days. Underneath it, she'd drawn a tiny red heart. Old habits die hard. I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then, For no reason at all, I said to Aurora. Set temperature to 72. Would you like me to engage thermostat diplomacy? It asked. I froze, laughing. You remember that command? Affirmative. Thermostat diplomacy protocol. Emotional balance through incremental temperature shifts. Activated, I said, smiling. Engaged, it replied. The vents whispered softly, warm air spreading through the room. Gentle, steady, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt balance return. Not from Sophie, not from revenge, but from reclaiming control of my own atmosphere. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't win the war by burning bridges. You win it by adjusting the temperature until the other side realizes they were never built for the heat. The morning after the great power outage of Sophie's birthday bash, my phone looked like it had survived a digital riot. 43 text messages, 12 missed calls, and an assortment of emojis that read like emotional Morse code. If drama had a font, it'd be bold, red, and all caps, and Sophie used every variation. My favorite message was time-stamped 2:14 a.m. You are cruel, you manipulative architect of misery. To which I replied at 6:03 a.m. Technically, yes, architect is my profession. The silence after that was delicious. By 9 a.m., the text had shifted tone, from furious to tragic. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then, you humiliated Theo. Good. You made me look insane. Unnecessary effort on my part. Do you even care about what we had? Depends on the blueprint. Then the piece de resistance. I can't believe you weaponized a thermostat. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. The phrase, weaponized a thermostat, should have come with a copyright. I didn't reply again, not because I didn't want to, but because I had entered the most peaceful state known to man, postmarital apathy. That serene, untouchable calm where someone's rage bounces off you like hail on a steel roof. The kind of peace monks envy. Around 11 a.m., I decided to check in on Aurora's diagnostics because, well, engineers cope through maintenance. The system report said everything was fine. Party mode, completed. Emotional fallout. Undetermined. Even my AI had learned sarcasm by proximity. Then came a call from Sophie's mom, Daria. The woman had the energy of a talk show host and the subtlety of an air horn. Marcus, honey, she began, voice dripping with guilt weapon butter. What did you do last night? I enforced silence, I said simply. I heard you shut the power off during her party. I shut the vibe off, I corrected. The power was just collateral damage. She sighed dramatically. You're both being ridiculous. You need to apologize. Why? Because marriage isn't about winning. No, I said, but it's definitely about not losing to Theo. She gasped like I'd used profanity in a church. That's not funny. Neither is hosting your ex in your marital home, I said, leaning back. But here we are. Daria muttered something about pride and immaturity, which I mentally translated to you hurt my daughter's ego. I let her monologue until she ran out of parental fuel. Marcus, she finally said, if you keep acting like this, she's going to do something drastic. Like what? Invite another ex to brunch. Click. She hung up. I took a long sip of coffee and muttered, worth it. The rest of the day unfolded like an experimental therapy session in detachment. I worked remotely from the hotel lounge, sketching designs for a mid-century office renovation. My brain was happy. Lines, proportions, symmetry, order. Unlike my marriage, blueprints never gaslight you. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up uninvited, which meant he was worried or bored. He plopped down beside me, holding 2 coffees. You look too calm, he said. That's suspicious. I'm fine, I said. No one who says, I'm fine in that tone is fine. I shrugged. I'm adjusting. He sipped his coffee. So she's blowing up your phone? Like a fireworks finale. And you're just ignoring it? Yep. Bold. Therapeutic. He leaned in. You realize this isn't over, right? She's gonna escalate. I chuckled. Ben, the only thing she can escalate at this point is her own imagination. You say that now, he said. But chaos loves company. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. New message. I'm coming over. Ben grinned. Chaos RSVP'd. I stared at the text. Then typed. Not a good idea. She replied instantly. You can't stop me. I typed back. Aurora can. Ben snorted coffee out his nose. You're diabolical. Thank you, I said. I try. An hour later, the universe tested my patience. Sophie showed up at the hotel lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity who'd just been canceled. She marched toward me like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. "We're talking," she declared. I gestured to the chair. "Proceed, Your Honor." She sat down with a sigh. "You think this is funny, don't you? I think it's poetic. You humiliated me. Correction. You hosted your ex at our home and humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting. God, you're impossible," she groaned. "Why do you always need to be right?" "It's not about being right," I said. "It's about refusing to be wronged in surround sound." She blinked, thrown off by my calm. "You've lost your mind." "No," I said. "I've found my peace." "Peace?" she scoffed. "You're sleeping in a hotel, Marcus." "Exactly," I said, sipping my drink. "Peace is a king-sized bed with no passive-aggressive snoring beside it." Her jaw dropped. "I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe I didn't say it sooner." She shook her head, exhaling sharply. "So that's it. You're done. I'm done being the project manager of your drama. You think you're perfect?" "Oh no," I said. "I'm insufferable, but at least I'm consistent." For a second, she didn't say anything. Her eyes softened, just slightly. "I didn't invite Theo to hurt you," she said quietly. "I just wanted to prove we could all be adults." I tilted my head. "You invited your ex who once proposed to you in a Chili's parking lot. That's not adulthood. That's nostalgia with bad lighting." She blinked back tears. "You make everything sound so cold." "That's because you confuse warmth with chaos," I said gently. "You think noise means life. I think silence means peace." She stared at me for a long time. "You really don't love me anymore, do you?" "I love you," I said. "I just stopped volunteering for the circus." The tears finally fell. And damn it, part of me wanted to reach across and comfort her. But the logical part reminded me that empathy was how this cycle restarted. So I sat still. I let her cry. After a while, she sniffed and said, "You're heartless." I smiled sadly. "No, Sophie. I just stopped letting you set the temperature." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, leaning forward, "for years, you controlled the emotional thermostat in this marriage. You decided when we were warm, when we were cold, when we boiled. Last night, I finally realized I could just turn the damn thing off." She looked away. "You're proud of that." "I'm relieved." Her voice cracked. "So what, that's it? You want a divorce?" "I want my peace," I said. "If divorce is the invoice, I'll pay it." She stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll regret it in quiet." She stormed off, heels clicking across the marble floor. People stared. I didn't care. I just sat there, breathing. Ben texted 2 minutes later. "She's gone." "Gone," I replied. "You okay?" "Better than the thermostat." That night, alone in the hotel room, I poured myself a drink and thought about her words. Heartless. Maybe she was right. But when you've spent years managing someone else's chaos, sometimes detachment feels like freedom, not cruelty. I picked up my phone and, for the first time all day, opened Aurora's app. The system's mood log still showed last night's chaos metrics, spikes in volume, temperature fluctuations, lighting anomalies. But under it, one line stood out. User override detected. Emotional climate stabilization. I laughed quietly. Even the algorithm was rooting for me. Still, there was a flicker of guilt. Sophie wasn't evil. She was just built for drama, and I was built for design. She saw life in fireworks. I saw it in floor plans. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building together. I just kept maintaining while she kept redecorating. At midnight, I texted her one last time. "We should talk." Calmly. No reply. Fair enough. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and went home, not to reconcile, but to gather my things. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. It smelled like perfume and resentment. The counter was still covered in party debris, half-eaten cupcakes, a tipped-over champagne flute, and one lonely balloon clinging to the ceiling like a ghost of bad decisions. Aurora greeted me softly. "Welcome home, Marcus." Emotional readings, moderate tension detected. "Good eye," I said. There was a note on the table in Sophie's handwriting. "We need space. Don't contact me for a few days." Underneath it, she'd drawn a tiny red heart. "Old habits die hard." I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then, for no reason at all, I said to Aurora, "Set temperature to 72." Would you like me to engage thermostat diplomacy? It asked. I froze, laughing. You remember that command? Affirmative. Thermostat diplomacy protocol. Emotional balance through incremental temperature shifts. Activated, I said, smiling. Engaged, it replied. The vents whispered softly, warm air spreading through the room. Gentle, steady, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt balance return. Not from Sophie, not from revenge, but from reclaiming control of my own atmosphere. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't win the war by burning bridges. You win it by adjusting the temperature until the other side realizes they were never built for the heat. The morning after the great power outage of Sophie's birthday bash, my phone looked like it had survived a digital riot. 43 text messages, 12 missed calls, and an assortment of emojis that read like emotional Morse code. If drama had a font, it'd be bold, red, and all caps, and Sophie used every variation. My favorite message was time-stamped 2:14 a.m. You are cruel, you manipulative architect of misery. To which I replied at 6:03 a.m. Technically, yes, architect is my profession. The silence after that was delicious. By 9 a.m., the text had shifted tone, from furious to tragic. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then, you humiliated Theo. Good. You made me look insane. Unnecessary effort on my part. Do you even care about what we had? Depends on the blueprint. Then the piece de resistance. I can't believe you weaponized a thermostat. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. The phrase, weaponized a thermostat, should have come with a copyright. I didn't reply again, not because I didn't want to, but because I had entered the most peaceful state known to man, postmarital apathy. That serene, untouchable calm where someone's rage bounces off you like hail on a steel roof. The kind of peace monks envy. Around 11 a.m., I decided to check in on Aurora's diagnostics because, well, engineers cope through maintenance. The system report said everything was fine. Party mode, completed. Emotional fallout, undetermined. Even my AI had learned sarcasm by proximity. Then came a call from Sophie's mom, Daria. The woman had the energy of a talk show host and the subtlety of an air horn. Marcus, honey, she began, voice dripping with guilt weapon butter. What did you do last night? I enforced silence, I said simply. I heard you shut the power off during her party. I shut the vibe off, I corrected. The power was just collateral damage. She sighed dramatically. You're both being ridiculous. You need to apologize. Why? Because marriage isn't about winning. No, I said, but it's definitely about not losing to Theo. She gasped like I'd used profanity in a church. That's not funny. Neither is hosting your ex in your marital home, I said, leaning back. But here we are. Daria muttered something about pride and immaturity, which I mentally translated to you hurt my daughter's ego. I let her monologue until she ran out of parental fuel. Marcus, she finally said, if you keep acting like this, she's going to do something drastic. Like what? Invite another ex to brunch. Click. She hung up. I took a long sip of coffee and muttered, worth it. The rest of the day unfolded like an experimental therapy session in detachment. I worked remotely from the hotel lounge, sketching designs for a mid-century office renovation. My brain was happy. Lines, proportions, symmetry, order. Unlike my marriage, blueprints never gaslight you. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up uninvited, which meant he was worried or bored. He plopped down beside me, holding 2 coffees. You look too calm, he said. That's suspicious. I'm fine, I said. No one who says, I'm fine in that tone is fine. I shrugged. I'm adjusting. He sipped his coffee. So she's blowing up your phone? Like a fireworks finale. And you're just ignoring it? Yep. Bold. Therapeutic. He leaned in. You realize this isn't over, right? She's gonna escalate. I chuckled. Ben, the only thing she can escalate at this point is her own imagination. You say that now, he said. But chaos loves company. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. New message. I'm coming over. Ben grinned. Chaos RSVP'd. I stared at the text. Then typed. Not a good idea. She replied instantly. You can't stop me. I typed back. Aurora can. Ben snorted coffee out his nose. You're diabolical. Thank you, I said. I try. An hour later, the universe tested my patience. Sophie showed up at the hotel lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity who'd just been canceled. She marched toward me like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. "We're talking," she declared. I gestured to the chair. "Proceed, Your Honor." She sat down with a sigh. "You think this is funny, don't you? I think it's poetic. You humiliated me. Correction. You hosted your ex at our home and humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting. God, you're impossible," she groaned. "Why do you always need to be right?" "It's not about being right," I said. "It's about refusing to be wronged in surround sound." She blinked, thrown off by my calm. "You've lost your mind." "No," I said. "I've found my peace." "Peace?" she scoffed. "You're sleeping in a hotel, Marcus." "Exactly," I said, sipping my drink. "Peace is a king-sized bed with no passive-aggressive snoring beside it." Her jaw dropped. "I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe I didn't say it sooner." She shook her head, exhaling sharply. "So that's it. You're done. I'm done being the project manager of your drama. You think you're perfect?" "Oh no," I said. "I'm insufferable, but at least I'm consistent." For a second, she didn't say anything. Her eyes softened, just slightly. "I didn't invite Theo to hurt you," she said quietly. "I just wanted to prove we could all be adults." I tilted my head. "You invited your ex who once proposed to you in a Chili's parking lot. That's not adulthood. That's nostalgia with bad lighting." She blinked back tears. "You make everything sound so cold." "That's because you confuse warmth with chaos," I said gently. "You think noise means life. I think silence means peace." She stared at me for a long time. "You really don't love me anymore, do you?" "I love you," I said. "I just stopped volunteering for the circus." The tears finally fell. And damn it, part of me wanted to reach across and comfort her. But the logical part reminded me that empathy was how this cycle restarted. So I sat still. I let her cry. After a while, she sniffed and said, "You're heartless." I smiled sadly. "No, Sophie. I just stopped letting you set the temperature." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, leaning forward, "for years, you controlled the emotional thermostat in this marriage. You decided when we were warm, when we were cold, when we boiled. Last night, I finally realized I could just turn the damn thing off." She looked away. "You're proud of that?" "I'm relieved." Her voice cracked. "So what, that's it? You want a divorce?" "I want my peace," I said. "If divorce is the invoice, I'll pay it." She stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll regret it in quiet." She stormed off, heels clicking across the marble floor. People stared. I didn't care. I just sat there, breathing. Ben texted 2 minutes later. "She's gone." "Gone," I replied. "You okay?" "Better than the thermostat." That night, alone in the hotel room, I poured myself a drink and thought about her words. Heartless. Maybe she was right. But when you've spent years managing someone else's chaos, sometimes detachment feels like freedom, not cruelty. I picked up my phone and, for the first time all day, opened Aurora's app. The system's mood log still showed last night's chaos metrics, spikes in volume, temperature fluctuations, lighting anomalies. But under it, one line stood out. User override detected. Emotional climate stabilization. I laughed quietly. Even the algorithm was rooting for me. Still, there was a flicker of guilt. Sophie wasn't evil. She was just built for drama, and I was built for design. She saw life in fireworks. I saw it in floor plans. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building together. I just kept maintaining while she kept redecorating. At midnight, I texted her one last time. "We should talk." Calmly. No reply. Fair enough. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and went home, not to reconcile, but to gather my things. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. It smelled like perfume and resentment. The counter was still covered in party debris, half-eaten cupcakes, a tipped-over champagne flute, and one lonely balloon clinging to the ceiling like a ghost of bad decisions. Aurora greeted me softly. "Welcome home, Marcus." Emotional readings, moderate tension detected. "Good eye," I said. There was a note on the table in Sophie's handwriting. "We need space. Don't contact me for a few days." Underneath it, she'd drawn a tiny red heart. "Old habits die hard." I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then, for no reason at all, I said to Aurora, "Set temperature to 72. "Would you like me to engage thermostat diplomacy?" it asked. I froze, laughing. "You remember that command?" Affirmative. Thermostat diplomacy protocol. Emotional balance through incremental temperature shifts. Activated, I said, smiling. Engaged, it replied. The vents whispered softly, warm air spreading through the room. Gentle, steady, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt balance return. Not from Sophie, not from revenge, but from reclaiming control of my own atmosphere. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't win the war by burning bridges. You win it by adjusting the temperature until the other side realizes they were never built for the heat. I've learned two things about heartbreak. One, it's quieter than people think, and two, nothing heals you faster than a printer spitting out legal forms. I woke up that Monday morning feeling like a man who'd survived a particularly bad hurricane. House still standing, but every chair crooked. Sophie hadn't texted in 2 days. Not "I miss you." Not "let's talk." Just radio silence. Which, frankly, was a miracle. I half expected her to send a singing telegram demanding closure. So, like any responsible adult processing emotional carnage, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and Googled how to file a notice to quit for joint tenants who think they own your soul. The internet, bless its pragmatic heart, delivered a checklist, a template, and the comforting realization that bureaucracy loves no one. Filling out those forms was oddly therapeutic. Line by line, date by date, my brain rewired itself from heartbreak to logistics. Address? Check. Leaseholder name? Mine. Reason for notice? Personal separation and tenancy revocation. Translation: you don't get to live rent-free in my emotional or physical square footage. The ink glided across the page like freedom wearing cologne. Ben called mid-form. You sound weirdly upbeat for a guy filing a breakup eviction. Because I'm not crying, I said. I'm notarizing. He whistled. That's darkly poetic. Everything's poetic when you're done being gaslit. So what's the plan? Serve her legally. Retrieve my stuff. Begin a new chapter titled, "The Man Who Finally Read the Fine Print." You really gonna go through with it? Ben, I said, if she can invite Theo to my house, I can invite a process server to hers. The server I hired was a man named Todd, mid-40s, bald, the kind of guy who looked like he'd seen it all and still showed up early. He had this dry humor that felt like a mirror of mine. You sure about this, pal? He asked, flipping through the paperwork. I've never been sure, I said. You'd be surprised how often people change their minds halfway. Not this guy, I said, tapping my chest. This guy has receipts, backup copies, and a new hobby called peace. He nodded. Respect. Most folks get emotional. You're cold as marble. Architect, I said. We like our structures stable. He smirked. All right then, let's build you some closure. When he showed up at the apartment to serve Sophie, I stayed parked across the street, watching like a man auditing his own past. Todd walked up the steps, calm as ever, and knocked. She answered in a robe, hair in that messy bun she only wore when she was equal parts furious and unbothered. I couldn't hear the exchange, but I could see it. Her jaw tightening, the paper trembling in her hand, the slight stomp of her bare foot that said, "How dare you turn consequences into a postal delivery?" Todd came back, dusting off his hands like he'd just changed a tire. She signed, he said. Signed? Yeah. Right next to acknowledged receipt. She even underlined your name for emphasis. That tracks, I said. You want me to file the affidavit of service today? Absolutely. File it with gusto. He grinned. You're one chill dude, Marcus. I like your style. Thanks, I said. I'm running on caffeine and detachment. That night, I went home, not to stay, but to take inventory. I'd learned something valuable from that party debacle. Possession is 9/10 of survival. I wanted my things out before emotions turned into demolition tools. The apartment was oddly quiet. Aurora's sensors greeted me with a soft chime. Welcome home, Marcus. Environmental tension elevated. Noted, I muttered. I moved through the space like a ghost checking for haunting rights. My drafting desk, still there. My espresso machine, safe. My toolbox, missing. Classic. I found it later in the hallway closet under a pile of her yoga mats. Symbolic, really. Strength and structure buried under flexibility. Sophie emerged from the bedroom as I was unplugging my monitor. So it's true, she said flatly. You actually sent a process server. Consider it closure with a signature. You're unbelievable. I get that a lot lately. She crossed her arms. You didn't even give me a chance to talk. You had 6 years, I said, and an entire birthday party. That was one night. It was a thesis, I replied. She looked at the half-packed boxes. So what? You're just moving out. I'm moving on. You can't just erase me, Marcus. I paused, looking up at her. I'm not erasing you. I'm just removing you from the blueprints. The structure stands. You just don't get to live in it anymore. She laughed bitterly. You think you're so composed, don't you? Like this is all just business to you. It is, I said. Business with emotional zoning laws. Her voice cracked. I loved you, you know. I nodded slowly. And I believe you did. But love without respect is like a roof without support beams. It collapses under pressure. She wiped her eyes. You're quoting yourself now. Professionally, I said. She glared, stormed off, and slammed the door to the bedroom. Our bedroom, technically, though the word our was now pending legal review. Ben arrived 15 minutes later, carrying takeout and sarcasm. You sure this isn't an elaborate art installation? He asked, setting down the bags. Because it's giving divorce chic. I prefer mid-century detachment, I said, taping a box. He whistled low. Man, this is intense. Yeah, but it's progress. What's the next step? File notice, retrieve property, emotional bankruptcy. He grinned. And after that, therapy, bourbon, and possibly a houseplant. Sophie's voice called faintly from the bedroom. Ben, tell your friend he's insane. Ben looked at me. You want me to? Tell her the truth, I said. He raised his voice. He's not insane. He's architecting closure. She screamed back. That's not a thing. Ben shrugged. Guess it is now. After he left, I kept working. Packing can be spiritual if you do it right. Every object you touch asks you a question. Do I still serve a purpose? Or am I just emotional clutter? By midnight, I'd answered every question with ruthless efficiency. Before leaving, I did something uncharacteristic. I took one last walk through the apartment. I paused in each room, like saying goodbye to an old friend who'd been slowly turning into an enemy. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her perfume and burned toast. The living room held ghosts of laughter that now sounded rehearsed. The bedroom, well, let's just say the mattress was now a museum of misplaced loyalty. As I passed the thermostat, I couldn't resist one last act of symbolic revenge. Aurora, I said, set temperature to 62. Warning, it replied. This may cause discomfort. Exactly. The vents hummed, the air turned crisp, and I smiled. Goodbye, Sophie. I left that night feeling lighter. I'd taken the first step in reclaiming my peace, and it came with legally binding paperwork. There's something oddly empowering about choosing to be the adult in the breakup, even if you're the sarcastic kind of adult who jokes through the pain. The next morning, Sophie tried to retaliate. She called the building manager, claiming I'd abandoned the lease. Luckily, I'd anticipated that move. I sent him the notice to quit, copies of the payment receipts, and a polite reminder that my name alone was on the lease. He emailed back, all good. You're covered. Checkmate. But because the universe loves irony, Sophie wasn't done. She called me that evening, voice trembling with righteous fury. You're not going to make me look like the bad guy, she shouted. You don't need my help for that, I said. I'm serious, Marcus. I'll tell everyone you were abusive. Abusive? I repeated, genuinely stunned. Sophie, the most aggressive thing I've done this year is alphabetize the spice rack. You think this is a joke? She snapped. No, I said softly. I think it's the final act. She hung up, of course. That was her signature move. But this time, instead of shaking, I laughed. A full, stupid, liberating laugh that startled even me. Because I realized that's what happens when the person who once terrified you emotionally finally loses their power. They start performing for an audience that's left the theater. The next day, I met Todd again to finalize the filing. He looked up from his clipboard. Everything's official. 30-day countdown starts now. Perfect, I said. Feels weird, doesn't it? Turning love into paperwork. Yeah, I said. But at least the paperwork listens. When I got home, I found a single sticky note taped to the door. Sophie's handwriting again. You'll regret making me your enemy. I peeled it off, stuck it on my fridge, and wrote underneath. Already did. Now I'm making you my past. That night, I sat in the half-empty apartment with a beer, the sound of the city humming through the vents. For the first time in months, I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll old texts or reread fights disguised as conversations. I just sat there, breathing in the kind of silence that doesn't feel lonely, it feels earned. Because sometimes peace doesn't arrive as forgiveness. Sometimes it arrives as a notice, stamped, filed, and perfectly formatted. And if that's not closure, I don't know what is. There are few things more humbling than watching a police cruiser pull up in front of your old apartment while you're holding a cardboard box labeled Personal Dignity. It was 9:03 a.m. on a Wednesday, and I was about to participate in the most awkward social event imaginable, the civil standby. The concept's simple. Two officers watch while you retrieve your belongings from an ex who still thinks she's starring in a soap opera. Basically, it's divorce cosplay with badges. Ben was my designated sidekick, mostly because he'd begged to witness the chaos in its natural habitat. The man showed up with coffee and popcorn like we were attending a matinee. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked, handing me the cup. "Ready," I said. "Ben, I've been emotionally homeless for weeks. I'm just here to collect my coffee maker and what's left of my pride." We climbed out of the car, and the lead officer, Officer Hernandez, according to the name tag, approached us with the weary expression of someone who's seen too many domestic disputes and not enough donuts. "You're Mr. Reed?" she asked. "That's me," I said. "All right," she said. "You've got 30 minutes to retrieve your property. Stay calm. Don't engage in arguments. Don't touch each other. We're not therapists, we're referees." "Got it," I said. I promised to use only verbal sarcasm. She gave me the look of a woman who'd heard that before. "Let's go." We rode the elevator up, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. My heart wasn't pounding, just steady, calm, like a man who'd already made peace with whatever spectacle waited behind that door. When the elevator doors opened, the scene did not disappoint. Sophie opened the door wearing my robe. And not just wearing it, thriving in it. Like it was couture. She had a mug in her hand and an expression that said, "You thought you'd seen audacity before? Behold, the sequel." Behind her, Theo was sprawled on the couch, shirtless, like some kind of lounge lizard on vacation. His hair was messy, his confidence wasn't, and my once impeccably clean living room now looked like the set of an early 2000s music video. "Well," I said, smiling politely, "this is nostalgic in a horrifying way." Theo turned his head lazily. "Hey man," he said, "didn't know you were coming by." "Really?" I said, "because the part where I scheduled a police standby might have tipped you off." Sophie folded her arms, mug clutched like a prop. "You didn't need to bring the police. This is dramatic, even for you." Officer Hernandez stepped in, professional and unamused. "Ma'am, he's here to retrieve his property. You were informed of this." Sophie gave a tight smile. I didn't think he'd actually use the civil standby. "Well," I said, stepping inside, "you didn't think I'd leave either. We're both full of surprises." Theo stood up slowly, trying to look diplomatic. "Let's all just keep it cool, yeah? No need for hostility." I gestured to him with my coffee. "You're shirtless in another man's home, Theo. I think hostility's already on the menu." "Hey, I'm just trying to de-escalate." "Then maybe sit on my couch." The officer cleared her throat. "Let's keep this civil, gentlemen." "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'm all about civility. That's why I brought the law." I moved through the apartment methodically, checking off items on my mental list like I was shopping at the world's saddest IKEA. Laptop, check. Design tablet, check. My espresso machine, the altar of my sanity, still on the counter, gleaming like it missed me. "Come to Papa," I muttered, unplugging it carefully. Theo watched me pack with mild curiosity, like a tourist observing local customs. "You really labeling your boxes?" he asked. "I'm an architect," I said. "We label everything. Keeps chaos from pretending its personality." He chuckled. "You're intense, man. Better intense than unemployed and shirtless." "Okay, that's uncalled for." "Yeah," I said, "so was you." Sophie made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a growl. "You're unbelievable." "Thank you," I said cheerfully. "That's my LinkedIn tagline." Officer Hernandez stepped closer, clearly regretting every career choice that led her to this moment. "Mr. Reed, just focus on your items, please." I nodded, zipping another box. "Oh, I am. I'm laser focused on my personal property and the smell of betrayal." I found my record collection next, half gone. "Sophie," I said without turning, "where are my vinyls?" She hesitated. Theo said he liked them. I looked over my shoulder, deadpan. "You gave my records to the human equivalent of elevator music?" Theo raised his hands. Hey, I was going to give them back. Officer Hernandez stepped in again. Ma'am, he's entitled to all items listed in the lease inventory. Sophie huffed. Fine. Take your stupid music. I smiled, sliding them back into the box. Thank you. My stupid music appreciates your generosity. As I worked, Ben quietly filmed the process, not to post, but to keep as insurance. Dude, he whispered, this is better than reality TV. You're killing it. I'm not killing it, I said. I'm documenting it. He nodded solemnly. That's even colder. By the time I reached the bedroom, I was halfway between exhaustion and amusement. Sophie stood in the doorway, blocking my path. You don't have to do this, she said softly. I paused. Yes, I do. Can't we just talk? We tried that, I said, setting another item into a box. You called me emotionally unavailable, then emotionally manipulative, then emotionally robotic. I'm running out of adjectives. She crossed her arms. You're still making jokes. It's either that or cry, and I'm all out of waterproof mascara. Her eyes softened for a second. I never meant to hurt you, Marcus. I met her gaze. But you did. Repeatedly. And at some point, intent stops matching. Theo, sensing emotional tension, stepped in like an unwanted ad pop-up. Hey, maybe I should. I cut him off. Yes, you should. Back up. Officer Hernandez looked ready to intervene again. I raised a hand. Relax, officer. I'm calm. This is calm. This is the gold standard of calm. Ben muttered. You're terrifying when you're calm. Thank you, I said. It's a skill. I loaded the last box and sealed it with the kind of finality you only get from heartbreak and good tape. All right, I said to the officer. I'm done. Theo shrugged. Guess this is goodbye, huh? Oh, Theo, I said, smiling. This was goodbye the moment you took your shirt off in my living room. Sophie looked like she wanted to slap me and hug me simultaneously. Instead, she said, you'll regret this. Maybe, I said, picking up the espresso machine. But at least I'll regret it in my own place. Officer Hernandez nodded to me. We're good here. Let's go. As I walked out, Sophie called after me, voice trembling with anger and pride. You think you've won? I stopped at the door, turned slightly, and said, No, Sophie. I just stopped playing. The elevator ride down was the quietest moment I'd had in weeks. Ben exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Bro, that was cinematic. Tragicomic, I corrected. A genre of its own. He laughed. You're either going to write a book about this or start a podcast. Maybe both, I said. Call it Blueprints for Boundaries. When we reached the lobby, Officer Hernandez gave me a polite nod. Good luck, Mr. Reed. Thanks, I said. I think I've finally built something stable. Ben and I loaded the boxes into the trunk of his car. He turned to me, still chuckling. Man, that guy was seriously shirtless at 9 a.m. What kind of confidence is that? The kind that comes from not paying rent, I said. We drove in silence for a while before he spoke again. So what now? I looked out the window at the passing cityscape. Now I rebuild. Without glitter. Without chaos. Just structure. He smirked. You gonna miss her? Every now and then, I said honestly. But only like you miss a firework. Bright, loud, and better admired from a distance. When we unloaded at my temporary apartment, Ben helped me carry the boxes up. My new place was smaller, quieter, undecorated. Just white walls and potential. I set the espresso machine on the counter like a sacred object. There, I said. Civilization restored. Ben handed me a bottle from one of the boxes. Found this. Scotch. Want me to stay? Nah, I said, smiling. Go home, man. You've done enough damage control. He nodded. You sure you're good? Yeah, I said. For the first time in a long time. After he left, I unpacked slowly, piece by piece, rebuilding my life from boxes labeled office, kitchen, memories I haven't decided on yet. Every item I placed felt like reclaiming a square inch of my identity. By nightfall, the place actually started to look like mine. I made coffee just for the symbolism. The first sip tasted like freedom, slightly bitter, perfectly earned. Aurora pinged on my phone with a notification, new device detected. Would you like to sync to existing profile? I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, no? Start fresh. It replied, welcome, Marcus. System initialized. I smiled. Clean slate. As I stood there, looking at the soft glow of my new lamp over the packed boxes, I realized something important. Closure isn't fireworks. It's not screaming matches or revenge victories. It's standing in your own quiet apartment, sipping bad coffee, and realizing the world didn't end. It just resized itself. And yeah, Theo might still be shirtless somewhere. Sophie might still be furious, but me? I was finally off the emotional grid. Unsubscribed from chaos. Rebuilding without glitter or drama. Just good lighting and peace. You ever think you've reached the end of the story, only for life to yell, plot twist, and hand you a court summons? That was my Tuesday. I woke up to an email from the county clerk's office confirming that my unlawful detainer case had been filed and that the defendant, my soon-to-be ex, Sophie, had been properly notified. It was the least romantic sentence I'd ever read, and somehow, it was also the most satisfying. I used to wake up to "Good morning, babe." Now it was case hashtag 4092-73 has been accepted for review. I'll take it. See, Sophie didn't leave. I gave her 30 days notice, and instead of packing, she went full squatter princess. She stayed in the apartment like it was her birthright, sipping my wine, using my Wi-Fi, and, I assume, rehearsing her sad victim monologue for her friends. Every day she stayed, my patience depreciated like a luxury car with bad mileage. When I confronted her over text, she wrote, "You can't evict me from my home. It's our home." I replied, "It's actually my lease. You were the guest star." She didn't answer, which was fine, because the sheriff eventually would. The next few weeks turned into a waiting game. Legal paperwork moved slower than a toddler on a sugar crash. But I had a secret weapon, my attorney, Sharon Wells. Sharp, calm, and terrifying in heels. She specialized in property disputes and high-drama dissolutions, which sounded like she moonlighted as a therapist for the emotionally volatile. She looked at me over her glasses during our first meeting. "Mr. Reed," she said, "you've documented everything, yes?" I slid a folder across her desk. Receipts, messages, photos, system logs, even Aurora reports. Her eyebrows rose. "Aurora, my smart home system. It tracks environmental anomalies and user activity." She blinked, impressed, and maybe a little alarmed. "You're the first client I've had whose witness is a thermostat." "She's reliable," I said. Sharon smirked. "Then let's build you a case, Mr. Reed. Consider this your blueprint for peace." That line almost made me emotional. Almost. The hearing was scheduled for mid-October. Sophie didn't file a response, which legally meant she'd basically ghosted the court. Poetic, right? The same woman who loved confrontation suddenly discovered the art of avoidance. By the time Judgment Day rolled around, it was just me, Sharon, and the quiet hum of justice about to be served. That morning, I wore my best competent adult outfit, gray blazer, dark jeans, no tie. The kind of look that says, I measure stress in square footage. Sharon reviewed the paperwork as we waited in the hallway. Once we get the default judgment, the sheriff will issue a 5-day notice. She'll have that time to vacate voluntarily. And if she doesn't? I asked. Sharon smiled the way dentists do before they drill. Then she'll leave involuntarily. Inside the courtroom, it was anticlimactic in the best possible way. The judge glanced over the documents, asked a few questions, and then said, "Judgment for the plaintiff." That was it. Years of love, months of chaos, and now, 4 words and a gavel tap. Outside, Sharon handed me the paperwork. "Congratulations, Mr. Reed. You're officially the lawful occupant." I looked down at the stamped order. "It's not the victory I imagined." "That's because you're still human," she said. "Don't worry, that'll fade." I laughed, shook her hand, and drove straight to the sheriff's office to file the enforcement order. It felt bizarrely efficient, like I was checking off the final step in an emotional renovation project. Demolition, complete. Cleanup, pending. The deputies scheduled the eviction for Friday morning. I wasn't allowed to be there during the initial removal. They said it was for safety reasons. Translation: they didn't want me throwing sarcastic grenades while Sophie screamed about injustice. Fair. Friday came. I stood across the street again, just like I had the day the process server showed up, except this time there were uniforms, radios, and the kind of calm authority that even Sophie couldn't out-talk. 2 deputies walked in. 5 minutes later, I heard shouting through the glass. Then came the sound of furniture being moved. Not carefully, violently. I could see her through the window, flailing, yelling, throwing her hands around like an interpretive dance about denial. One deputy held the door while the other guided her out, still ranting. She looked furious, disheveled, and weirdly proud. "You're heartless, Marcus," she shouted from the sidewalk. "You ruined my life." I wanted to say something kind, something neutral, but instead, I said, "That's rich coming from the woman who threw a birthday party for her ex in my house." The deputy shot me a warning look. I raised my hands. "Just saying." She screamed one last line, something about karma, and stormed off down the block, robe flapping like a cape of delusion. The deputies followed protocol, securing the property and handing me a new set of keys. One of them, a gray-haired officer named Jenkins, looked at me and said, "Congratulations. You're the proud owner of peace and probable damages." He wasn't wrong. When they left, I stepped inside, and it hit me like a punch to the chest. The apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt vandalized. Every room was a crime scene of spite. My leather sofa, sliced open down the middle like it had been auditioning for a mob movie. The coffee table, smashed. My drafting chair, missing a wheel, which I found lodged in the drywall like she'd thrown it. The kitchen sink was clogged, cemented, literally, with coffee grounds and something that smelled like vengeance. Aurora's voice came through faintly. "System damage detected. Environmental distress at 92%. You and me both, pal," I muttered. I walked around in slow motion, taking in the destruction. The wall-mounted TV was shattered. My books, ripped apart and dumped in the bathtub. And the bathroom mirror? Written across in red lipstick. "Hope it was worth it, psycho." I stared at the words for a long time, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly on brand for her. Dramatic handwriting, no punctuation, full commitment to victimhood. If Shakespeare had written petty vandalism, this would have been it. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos from every angle, and emailed them to Sharon. She called 5 minutes later. "Jesus," she said. She really went for it. "She's thorough," I said. "I'll give her that." "You'll need to file for damages," she said. "We'll attach the evidence and pursue small claims. Shouldn't take long." "Good," I said. "I want this chapter ended in ink and judgment." "Keep everything documented," she said. "Don't clean yet." I looked around at the chaos. Oh, trust me, I wouldn't dream of depriving the court of this masterpiece. That weekend, I did what any self-respecting man does after emotional arson. I deep cleaned. I put on a playlist titled Post-Disaster Zen and got to work. Broken glass swept, trash bagged, floors scrubbed. It was oddly cathartic, like exorcising bad energy with Lysol and sarcasm. Every time I found something broken, I whispered, "Symbolic." By Sunday, the apartment looked like a minimalist showroom. Empty, clean, echoing. No more rose candles, or throw pillows, or chaos disguised as warmth. Just structure, simplicity me. The following week, I sat in small claims court, staring across the aisle at Sophie. She looked deflated, like someone who'd expected a movie climax and got a spreadsheet instead. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she tried for theatrics. "He provoked me," she said. "He emotionally abused me." The judge didn't flinch. "Do you have evidence of that?" Sophie blinked. He shut off the lights during my birthday party." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Reed." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I also have footage of her inviting her ex-boyfriend to that same party, vandalizing my property afterward, and writing me a message in lipstick. Would you like to see it?" Her lawyer cringed. The judge said dryly, "Please." I handed over the printed photos, the receipts, the Aurora logs. The judge flipped through them, expression neutral but clearly entertained. "Did you really write 'Hope it was worth it', psycho on his mirror, Miss Lane?" Her face drained. "That's not my handwriting." "Really?" the judge said. "Because your Instagram from that same day shows you using the same shade of lipstick." Ben was in the back of the courtroom. I could hear him trying not to laugh. By the end of it, the judge ruled in my favor. $10,000 in damages. The number wasn't huge, but the validation? Immense. It wasn't about the money. It was about the acknowledgement that my sanity hadn't been imaginary. As we left, Sophie brushed past me, whispering, "You think this makes you the hero?" I smiled softly. "No, Sophie. Just the survivor." That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of scotch, the city glowing beneath me. The apartment was quiet again. No drama, no shouting, no soundtrack but the hum of the refrigerator. I'd finally reached the part of the story where silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. Aurora chimed softly from inside. Would you like to resume background music? I thought for a moment, then said, no. Let's enjoy the quiet. And for the first time in years, I did. There's something profoundly poetic about winning a lawsuit against someone who once swore they loved you forever. Forever, apparently, means until the damages are itemized. The morning of the hearing, I woke up feeling like a man about to defend his dissertation on the topic of emotional architecture and the physics of petty. My exhibit, a stack of receipts, a binder of photographs, and a smart home log file that could double as a witness testimony. If there were a Grammy for organized revenge, I'd be front row, tux pressed. The courtroom wasn't cinematic. It was beige, emotionally and literally. The walls, the chairs, the clerk's cardigan. Everything looked like it had given up on passion decades ago. Ben came with me, of course, claiming he wanted to observe justice in action. But really, he just wanted to see if Sophie would attempt another performance. He even brought popcorn, hidden in his briefcase like a toddler smuggling candy into a movie theater. When Sophie entered, the air changed. She looked composed, which for her meant she'd replaced rage with performative sadness. Hair perfectly straightened, lipstick a softer tone this time, subtle, remorseful, manipulative. She avoided my eyes, probably because she knew mine were busy drafting internal blueprints of satisfaction. The bailiff called our case, and just like that, the saga became state record. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Sharon Wells, my lawyer and my unofficial emotional bodyguard. Sharon had the calm of a surgeon and the empathy of a shark. Sophie sat opposite, flanked by her lawyer, a man with the defeated aura of someone paid in apologies. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a voice that could silence earthquakes, began, Mr. Reed, Ms. Lane, we're here to address damages resulting from property destruction following an eviction. I've reviewed the documents. Let's start with evidence. Sharon slid the binder forward like it was a holy text. Your Honor, Exhibit A, photographic documentation of vandalism consistent with retaliatory intent. Exhibit B, written note left by the defendant. Exhibit C, smart home data confirming no unauthorized access post-eviction, proving the damages occurred prior. The judge raised an eyebrow. Smart home data? Sharon smiled. Yes, Your Honor. My client's system recorded environmental anomalies, motion, temperature, lighting. Think of it as an impartial roommate. The judge nodded slowly. Proceed. On cue, Sharon handed her the printed screenshots from Aurora. Lines of timestamp data. Environmental anomaly detected. Temperature spike. Unrecognized user movement detected in living room. Audio signature. High decibel yelling. I leaned toward Ben and whispered, even my house testifies better than she does. He almost choked on a popcorn kernel. Then came Sophie's turn. Her lawyer stood, buttoning his jacket with the energy of a man about to defend a broken toaster. Your Honor, he said, my client acknowledges emotional distress but denies malicious intent. The damages were incidental, the result of a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The judge asked. She spray-painted his mirror. It was lipstick, he said weakly. The judge glanced at me. Lipstick? Yes, Your Honor, I said. Shade. Blood of My Enemies by Estee Lauder. A laugh rippled through the courtroom. Even the clerk smiled. Sophie's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the desk. The judge sighed. All right, let's get to the heart of it. Ms. Lane, did you write this note? She held up the photo. Hope it was worth it, psycho. Sophie's voice trembled. I might have. I was upset. Might have. Sophie bit her lip. Okay. I did. Do you dispute causing the other damages listed? She glanced at her lawyer, then at me. I don't remember everything clearly. I couldn't help myself. That's convenient. You should try vandalism with amnesia more often. It's very avant-garde. The judge shot me a look that said, I like you, but shut up. I obeyed. Sharon closed her binder. Your Honor, my client isn't here for vengeance. He's here for accountability. He's replaced the sofa, repaired the floors, and endured the cost of her destruction with the same precision he brings to his profession. He builds stability for a living. Yet Ms. Lane turned his home into an art installation about chaos. That was why I hired her. That, and her ability to weaponize adjectives. The judge nodded, flipping through the evidence again. I see invoices, receipts, photographs, corroborating messages. It's quite thorough. Sharon smiled. My client's middle name might as well be documentation. Actually, it's Raymond, I whispered. The judge set down her pen. Ms. Lane, you willfully damaged your ex-partner's property. This court awards Mr. Reed $10,000 in compensation. Boom. Gavel. Final. I felt something release inside me. Like pressure dropping after a long storm. Sophie looked pale, stunned. Her lawyer muttered something about appeals, but she barely heard him. When the session adjourned, she stood up and finally looked at me. You think this makes you better than me? She whispered. No, I said quietly. It makes me done with you. Her eyes glistened, not with remorse but indignation. You ruined my reputation. Sophie, I said, you handed it to me pre-ruined. I just filed the paperwork. She turned away, muttering something about karma, and walked out, leaving the smell of expensive perfume and poor decisions behind her. Ben exhaled dramatically. That was wow. 10 grand and poetic justice? You're basically Batman. Sharon smirked. Batman still pays my retainer. Outside, sunlight hit my face, and for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. The air felt lighter, the city louder, but in a good way. I'd spent so long drowning in noise, arguments, accusations, anxiety, that actual silence felt alien. Beautiful, but unfamiliar. Ben and I went to celebrate the only way men know how, by pretending we weren't celebrating. We ended up at a diner that smelled like syrup and second chances. He ordered pancakes. I ordered black coffee and the quiet satisfaction of victory. So, Ben said between bites, what now? I start over. He grinned. New city. No. New mindset. You gonna rebuild Aurora? I thought about that. The system had been my pride, my symbol of control. But it also represented the old me, the guy who thought order could fix chaos. Nah, I said finally. I'm going analog. Analog, he repeated. Light switches. Dumb bulbs. Manual thermostat. No more automation. I want to live in a place that doesn't try to predict me. Ben raised his mug. To dumb houses and smart men. I clinked mine against his. I'll drink to that. When I got home that evening, the apartment was quiet, eerily so. No humming lights, no auto-adjusting ambience, no synthetic voice greeting me. Just me and the faint buzz of the fridge. I sat down on my new sofa, cheaper, smaller, but blissfully intact, and stared at the blank wall where my old smart display used to be. I didn't miss it. For the first time, I realized how peaceful uncurated silence could be. I didn't need Aurora to dim the lights for mood. I didn't need sensors to tell me when to relax. I could just exist. The next few days were strange in their simplicity. I went to work, met deadlines, laughed again. Real laughter, not the kind you fake to diffuse tension. I bought plants. Real ones, not self-watering ones. I even learned their names, Oscar the fern and Brenda the snake plant. They required minimal attention and never texted me at 3 a.m. Sophie tried one last time to reach out. An email this time. Subject line, you won, okay? Inside, I hope you're happy. I'm not the monster you think I am. I stared at it for a long minute before typing back. Neither of us were monsters. We were just badly matched architects trying to live in the same blueprint. Then I hit send and archived the thread. No attachments. No dramatics. Just digital finality. Closure doesn't always feel like triumph. Sometimes it feels like coming home to a place you used to love and realizing you've outgrown it. A week later, I invited Ben over. He stood in the doorway, looking around. Wow. No tech. No chaos. Just walls. Feels good. Peaceful, I said. Feels like a museum of calm. Exactly what I was going for. He smirked. You dating again? I laughed. Not yet. I'm still in a committed relationship with personal space. That night, after he left, I stood by the window, city lights blinking in the distance. The air conditioner hummed quietly, manual, imperfect, human. I made myself tea and thought about how everything had come full circle. From the man who measured life in millimeters to the man who finally stopped measuring altogether. I didn't rebuild Aurora, but I did keep one piece of it, the main light strip, now permanently disconnected. I turned it on by hand each night. The soft glow reminded me not of the chaos it once accompanied, but of the calm that followed. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about Sophie, not in anger, just curiosity. I wonder if she's happy, if Theo's still around, if she ever tells her version of the story at parties. I hope she does. Let her have her narrative. I've got mine, and it's quieter. Every morning now, I wake up to the sound of the kettle, not a robotic chime. I measure coffee, not emotions. I leave the blinds half open so sunlight decides when to enter. And I smile, not because life's perfect, but because it's finally mine. They say architects build to last, but maybe the secret is knowing when to demolish. Because peace, as it turns out, isn't found in what you construct. It's found in what you stop trying to rebuild. And so, I sit here, mug in hand, surrounded by stillness, realizing the truest thing I've ever built is the quiet after the storm.